is that basically you're going to take 2 from there and put the 2 back there, so there's a no net.
I think the goals articulated in the resolution are very
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Correct. Okay. Thanks, George.
Very diplomatic.
Yes.
didn't go too far over this one.
A little over the top.
Maybe a little.
I'll give her a bunch of Wi-Fi.
Okay.
So it's UDC Wi-Fi. The password changed last meeting.
But the guest, yeah, I think I've got the password and everything. Just sign it.
Yeah, it's UDC Wi-Fi.
Are we having?
These are my makeshift fans.
Oh, that's okay.
So we were here for that password thing. It was so hot. I was
It's really
like,
awful in here.
to help situations.
We have a
You know, my
spare.
feeling, I'd like to find another place to meet.
It's okay.
This.
We're working on it.
Juanita,
Oh,
do you have an email?
I'd like to
Can you
be on
send
the
me
committee.
the announcements?
Well, we used to meet at Forest Hills in DC, but it had
Can
a
you
very
send me
similar
an email
felt.
with your
Yes,
announcements?
from Forest Hills.
It's so hot in here.
You will. That's what I'm asking you if you will.
But we our one of the
My goal now is to type everything up and send it to you after I've said it.
We sounded pretty comfortable,
Bypass me.
but not this one.
Thank you very much.
In the summer, it would get
But
terrible.
the parking is very bad, not for you, but for somebody who has to drive here.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to call this meeting to order. There we go. Give him another next. So as we call to order, let's just start with a roll call. Commissioner Dickinson, you can start us off and we'll move our way this way.
Good evening. I think it's appropriate that we have somebody here talking about carbon taxes and climate change tonight. My name's David Dickinson. I represent ANC 3F01.
I'm Bill Sittig. I represent 3F06.
Shirley Adelstein, 3F2.
Pat Chakopchik, 3F07.
Naomi Ruttenberg, 3F03.
Andrea Mola, 3F05.
Okay, to start things off, I have 3 changes to the agenda that was posted online. The first is we're going to add 2 items after the commissioner updates and announcements. This will be items 4 and 5 on our updated agenda. One will be an update from MPD, who's joining us tonight, just to give us an update on things going on in our neighborhood and take some questions from the commissioners in the crowd. We're going to slot that in at 10 minutes. Then we're also going to have an overview on the equality narrative from President Mason of UDC, and also slot that in for 10 minutes. And then finally, we're going to add, at the end of the agenda, after the update on the rent concessions issue, we're going to add a discussion and resolution on UDC's equality imperative. I was going to slot that for 10 minutes. Does that work, Commissioner Dickinson?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right. Any other changes to the agenda? Okay.
Excuse me, Commissioner Chakopchik. I know we have the Metropolitan Police Department and President Mason. I don't know what their schedules are this evening. I know we normally try to go in a particular order, but if either one of them would like to jump ahead of the commissioner updates, I'd be happy to accommodate that. I don't know if...
Yeah, we can do that. So we'll make those the first 2 items on our agenda. So and move commissioner updates and announcements until after that. Any other changes? Okay, I'm going to make a... Yeah.
I think we had some discussions on my introducing myself and the AARP liaison.
Yes. So, Jake, we will give you some time during the announcement section of our... Yeah, so we have a community announcements open forum. It's set for 20 minutes. It's the 7th item on our agenda. And I'll invite you and whoever else from the crowd would like to speak at that time. Okay? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to make a motion to adopt this agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor? All opposed? It passes unanimously. All right, we're going to gavel in. I have 734. And I'm going to make a motion to adopt the consent agenda, which deals with the supplemental resolution to BZA order number 19628. It's been posted online for the past week, so it meets the standards of our consent agenda, and it has to do with just a variance for the Burger King parking lot accessory lot that we passed a resolution in support of last week. All those in favor, I'm actually going to make a motion to adopt our consent agenda.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Siddick. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passes unanimously. Lieutenant, also, could you just step up to the mic? That is for our audience at home, so you might not hear your voice amplified, might still need to step up, but thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Can everybody hear me okay? Good evening, commissioners. I'm Officer Anthony McElwee. I'm one of your 8 traffic officers assigned here to the 2nd District, and I was asked by Lieutenant Stewart to conduct a traffic study / survey / enforcement in the 2700 block of Brandywine Avenue. I put some handouts out here that when you come in the door, if you wanted to follow along, but I'm just going to touch on them real quick. Thank you, Commissioner Jakovchek. Is that how you pronounce that?
It's close enough.
Who was the commissioner that reached out to us. There's 3 issues going on out here that he brought to our concern. One is speeding concerns along the 2700 block of Brandywine Street. The second was the stop sign running at Linian and Broad Branch attached to Brandywine Street. And 3, traffic calming ideas that we could come up with. I went out there, I was asked to dedicate 20 hours of my enforcement out there during my shift. I went out there several times for 20 hours, and during that time, I'm going to speak about the speeding. I stopped 16 vehicles on Brandywine Street, the 2700 block. Out of the 16, 14 were going westbound, coming off of Broad Branch, heading west towards Linian. These are the breakdowns. The highest speed I received out there was 41 miles an hour. It was 1 vehicle. The next one was 39 for 1 vehicle, 38, there were 2 vehicles, 37 miles per hour, 1, 36, I had 2, 35, I had 5, and 34 miles an hour, I had 4 vehicles. Just so you know, the fines range for speeding violations progressively goes up, and also the points go up. So we'll use the 41 mile an hour violation that I got. That is a $100 fine and has 3 points attached to it. I also did what we consider LiDAR monitoring, where I just sit there with the LiDAR. LiDAR is a speed timing, like radar. It tells me how fast your vehicle's traveling. I sat out there from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. this past Friday, the 16th. And between the vehicles that I stopped, this isn't including the vehicles, I had 54 vehicles go through my speed timing zone. The average speeds were 22 to 29 miles an hour. Reasons and explanations from the violators was I wasn't paying attention, and the second one was I was driving uphill. Obviously, the uphill area is the problem, and I'm going to touch back on that on our traffic calming issues. Also, going to the stop sign violations, I had 18 violations at the intersection of Brandywine and Linian. Out of the 18, 17 were slow roll-throughs, or what we commonly know as the California stop. Technically, by definition, if you're going to stop at a stop sign, you have to come to a complete stop. Means wheels motionless, stop. Technically, you should look to the right, left, and then right. Hardly anybody does that, including myself at times. All right, so I use my discretion, but I did have 17 roll-throughs, and I had 1 blatant violation where the gentleman did not stop at all. These on Brandywine Street at Broad Branch wasn't as bad as the problem that I saw, only because I believe that folks are coming down Broad Branch and they're kind of afraid to just roll through it. But I did have 5 violations. All were slow roll-throughs. Again, this is a $50 fine with points attached. And there was 1 sign violation when you come off Broad Branch. You're supposed to go to the far and make a left and come up. We have the do not enter sign. You can't go up that lane. You have to go down just to the other side of the triangle, if I may. I had 1 individual go through there. Out of the 54 tickets that I issued, 25 were D.C. residents. 2 were your neighbors. I'm not going to avoid any embarrassment. 1 lived on 28th Street. Very nice gentleman. And the other one lived up a little further on Brandywine, and she wasn't so nice. I don't know, maybe you guys haven't touched tag team football or something, and they lost last year. But she had mentioned that, well, why don't you come up here and get these people riding on our sidewalks with our bicycles and unleash dogs. I said, send me a complaint, we'll take care of it. Traffic calming issues. If you're from that area, I put the 2nd District Speed/Smart Machine. For those of you who do not know what that is, it's the machine that tells you how fast you were going. It's a great traffic calming machine that we have. I decided to place it as you're going eastbound down Brandywine. You already have a stationary sign up there that tells you how fast you're going, which is helping. So I figured, okay, let's make these folks know that we mean business. So I put the other sign down a little further, so you get hit by that sign, and you come down, and then you get hit again. I did run LiDAR and radar during the time the machine was out there. Both machines were in place. I didn't get anybody going over 25 miles an hour. So it certainly works. I jockeyed the machine around up to the 2900 block southbound on Brandywine. That's out there now. When the machine expires, it's solar powered and partial battery operated, so in the wintertime it doesn't stay on as long. When it dies, I'll bring it back, I'll charge it, and then I'm going to put it uphill on Brandywine as you come around off of Broad Branch. I put down out of all the folks that I stopped, I said I had 25 DC, 25 Maryland, 2 diplomat tags, 1 Georgia, and 1 Virginia. Everybody was cited that I mentioned as far as the violations, the miles per hour. Things that I noticed that you may want to consider, or the commissioners and the neighbors, you may want to consider stop signs at 28th Street. That would certainly slow them down. A mirror. And I took a ride up Broad Branch Road, and there's some mirrors that are installed on the telephone poles for you folks coming out of Fieldstone. Drive there. If you have a mirror, you can see somebody's coming. It'll give you a little bit heads up, so to speak, if you know what I'm talking about. You know, the little wide-end mirrors. And the other end, I'm going to be honest with you, the way the intersection is configured down there really is no deceleration ramp coming off of Broad Branch. If they would have brought that out a little further where you kind of have to slow down and then make your right, that would help you out a lot and would increase your vantage point when you exit that driveway. As far as speed enforcement, I know Lieutenant Stewart's going to have Officer Franchak and the other patrol officers continue to give you special attention. And finally, I am going to be out there Friday morning from 7 o'clock until 11. I encourage anyone who wants to do a ride-along, take advantage of the Metropolitan Police Department's 4-hour ride-along. If you're interested, my email is on the bottom. Again, I left some literature up here. Email me as soon as you can, and we'll get you connected up with our ride-along program, and you can ride with me. Other than that, I'd be happy to take some questions. You can also go to the website. And my name's on there. You can request myself if you'd like. It doesn't have to be Friday. And it's kind of cool, kind of fun. We can hang around in your neighborhood. We can answer some calls, make some traffic stops, and it may give you a peace of mind. We are out there. And I'll take any questions on traffic.
Sure. So, starting out, because these issues that we're going on today are in my colleague's district, I'm going to let the Commissioner from 303, do you have any specific questions on those before we go to more general questions?
Great. First of all, thank you very much for coming tonight and speak to this. And I think you've been part of a long email discussion of the neighborhood that had concerns. One of the other traffic calming suggestions that was proposed in that discussion was to put a 3-way stop at the bottom of the intersection of Brandywine and Broad Branch Road. Right now there's only a 1-stop sign, I believe, as you're going east on Brandywine and arrive at Broad Branch.
That would be a good idea, but you'd have to go through DDOT on that request. We'll certainly enforce it. Also consider what I said about coming down that hill at 28th Street. It'd be like a speed bump.
Yeah.
Plus we can park right there and blink them off when they don't stop. But yeah, you have to talk to DDOT because they have to do studies if it's going to make things worse on Broad Branch, stuff like that. But I agree with you. Yes, sir.
Andrew, do you have anything? Oh, we're gonna start with questions from the commissioner, and then and then we'll have it for the card after that. I'm actually gonna make a motion to extend debate on this for another 10 minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, yeah, unanimous. So we'll give another 10 minutes. Commissioner Milan, did you want to kick things up for us? I had a couple questions. Thank you so much for these creative and detailed looks at this part of our neighborhood. We also have some additional traffic items throughout the neighborhood that I wanted to flag for you. This specifically comes from our Streets and Sidewalks Committee, and they're mostly on Connecticut. So I don't know if that's something you can assist with, or Lieutenant Stewart, if we could put more on. But basically, they're all intersections on Connecticut Avenue. The first is at Connecticut and Van Ness. There's frequent illegal left turns occurring there. Drivers cutting around basically the first car in line during the short turn signal. Sometimes they even hop into the other the lane to get across. It's pretty dangerous. It risks an oncoming collision and pedestrians. And so in addition, there might be some longer term things in terms of making that light longer, and I think there are some structural things. But if there was a way to put a patrol there to just sort of monitor that, that'd be helpful for us.
Is that normally through the rush hour period?
I think that's actually during most times of day. It's one of those things, it might even happen a little bit less during the rush hour period, because people feel like they can get away with it a bit more. But if they're stuck 2 or 3 cars back and they feel like they're going to miss the arrow, that's oftentimes when you'll see them hop out and try to get around it. There's the intersection of Connecticut Avenue and Albemarle. There's been a number of recent accidents at the intersection. We feel it's due a lot to speeding and just riskier illegal turns. And so, it's also a pedestrian issue. If we could have some targeted enforcement there, we'd appreciate it. And then also the intersection of Connecticut Avenue and Sedgwick. There was a really bad accident that actually took out a chunk of the column in front of the building a couple months back. A lot of this happens during rush hour, especially as they're trying to cut through when there's 2 lanes going through 4 lanes of traffic. The red light running, the illegal turns, they seem to be a pretty regular issue at a somewhat irregular intersection in the way it's designed. So if we could have somebody keep an eye on that especially during rush hour would be helpful both in the morning and the evening. Thank you.
No, I don't have a specific question, but I did want to remark on the Van Ness intersection that I think the long-term solution, if it's something we feel that we can, I guess, get DDOT to work with us on, is that the light has an arrow and doesn't have a green light for people to continue through, which is typically how those lights work, and that really is at the root of the problem.
Yeah, and I think that one there is an arrow the other way that starts out, and then it's a dual left turn angle. Time? Well, I think it starts with the first one leading up, but I think there's some structural non-enforcement issues that we can probably work with some of your colleagues at other agencies to address it. So, Bill?
There's one intersection in my area that seems to have an accident or near a collision once a month, and that's at Reno Road and Yuma Street. Cars coming up from Albemarle, cars going up Yuma trying to cross that street, and there are numerous near collisions and every so often an actual collision. So it would be nice to have a traffic study in that area.
Again, we're pleased that you're out here and really appreciate you taking the time this evening. I want to also acknowledge a little bit out of turn President Mason, and just so you know, you're next here, so hang tight. But I had a question, and if you'll indulge just a little bit off of the traffic issue, and I don't know whether you were going to cover other community issues. There was an incident near Deal Middle School a couple weeks ago, an attempted kidnapping. Probably not a kidnapping per se, but an adult coming up behind a child near the middle school along Nebraska Avenue, and I forget the cross street there, but basically in front of the school. I know there was a lot of concern expressed on various community listservs. Do you have any follow-up information pertaining to that incident?
So that incident is being handled by the kidnapping unit, and I talked to Sergeant Marani Hines, and they pulled the videotape from that particular area off a lamppost that was right where the young lady was there, and the incident did not happen, as she described it. So,
Interesting.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. They did extensive interviewing of her, and she stuck by her story. But the videotape showed her just walking down the street. My understanding was that she was late running for school, and somehow this story involved.
Maybe. So, without getting into the details of that, then can you just generally describe what the MPD's role is in terms of security at the schools in general?
Well, generally, we are to protect the students that are on the school grounds at those times, and we'd assure if the principal comes to us and advise that they're not in class, that we actually have one of our vehicles go out and search for the child. I can't think of the name of what we call the vehicle. Yeah, but the truancy van will go out and pick up a child if they're looking for it, for her or him. That's generally what they would do, or handle any fights or anything going on within the school. Try to do some intervention, some counseling with the child, especially if they're gang related of some sort. But that's generally what they do in that particular area.
Thank you.
All right, one last thing I wanted to flag before we open it up to the crowd. I also have gotten some comments from constituents there regarding enforcement on the sort of interior sections of our neighborhoods, Forest Hills, or on the neighborhoods basically between Wisconsin and Connecticut. Just to, I don't have specific intersections that I can share with you, so I don't know how helpful this is, but there's a concern about a lack of enforcement going on in these areas also. Traffic enforcement. Just, pass-through commuters, and neighborhood traffic, to be honest, right? I think we all, take liberties at times. But, speeding, going through stop signs and things like that. I just wanted to flag that as a general issue. I don't know if there's something you can speak to or if there's specific requests we can make about that, but that's something that pops up from time to time.
Yes, if you can send me an email on the locations you would like for us to be in,
Okay.
I'll ensure that we'll give an officer special attention for
That's
it.
excellent. Thank you. Okay. Questions from the crowd? I think you had one, sir.
First, stuff
I was out there Friday 7 to almost 12, and then last week and the week before that, I came and I worked it from 12 to 5. So basically from 7 to 5 is what that study was, and the enforcement. Rush hour, it could be a little busy. And there was one thing that I left out. I kind of ask around when I'm speaking to the driver, ask them if they come through here all the time, and most of them said they do. Most of them utilize that roadway as like a Connecticut Avenue, Nebraska intersection bypass. And I made it clear to them that the neighbors are complaining. We're out here stepping up enforcement, and we're going to continue to be out here. And visibility enforcement, people remember that. When they drive through, they see us there, that sticks in their head. But yes, we've been out there I was out there for about 10 hours of the day, 11 hours. And I should mention, I also used our traffic unmarked car. We don't like to sneak attack them, so to speak, but we put the marked car out there. Obviously, you see the marked car, they're going to slow down or they're going to stop. I mean, I could sit right at that intersection. I'm in a Chevy Malibu, nice tinted windows. Last thing you would think would be a police car. So, and I will continue. And when I said I would be out there at 7 o'clock, this Friday I will be out there at 7, even if it's raining, I'm still going to be out there. Any other questions? I want to thank everybody for at least bringing this traffic issue to our attention. Rest assured, we'll continue to monitor the situation.
Officer McElroy, Lieutenant Stewart, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Our next item on the agenda, President Mason is here to discuss a little bit about the equity imperative here at UDC. It's a very interesting look at really one of the biggest resources for our city and for our neighborhood specifically. So I want to thank you for taking the time to join us tonight.
Sure. How long do I have?
How much time do you need?
10 minutes, 15?
Why don't we do 15?
Okay.
And,
you're not set up for PowerPoint, right?
We are not.
So I'll have to talk through it. Good evening. And I did bring the PowerPoint, so you can, if you want to download it, you can share it or whatever.
Okay. Why don't we do that? If we can, I'll take that from you.
Okay.
We'll put it on our website, and we'll have a special section.
I need it back because
I'll copy it right now.
It's Equity Imperative Final 2.
Okay.
I think is what it is.
Excuse me, are these the same slides? Yeah, we have.
Yeah, these are updated.
Okay.
It says the mayor's contact number and a few other things.
Oh.
So, good evening, good afternoon, good evening. Listening to that conversation reminded me how happy I am that I didn't bring my car from Louisiana to Washington. I don't have a car up here, so I don't deal with any of those issues. So for the next 15 minutes, I wanted to talk about the District of Columbia, a community that wants to be sustainable and resilient and equitable. The Rockefeller Foundation did a study where they showed that the greatest threat to resilience and sustainability in the district is our large income gap. But that same study also said that we are a very resilient city because we are willing to invest in the things that tend to close that gap, which is why the mayor has said one of our main priorities is to put as many people on the pathway to the middle class as possible. You've heard her say that. And we have a PowerPoint that we'll share with you, an updated version that's called the Equity Imperative, Completing the Pathways to the Middle Class. Because the mayor was correct in saying that education is a main component of being able to achieve middle class status. The national middle class median household income is $59,000 a year. In the district, it's $75,000 a year. If you break it down by racial categories, white residents of the district have a $127,000 a year average household income, Asians $99,000, Latinos $65,000, and African Americans have an annual household income of $31,700. Educational attainment makes a difference because the median salary in the district is $60,000. If you have a high school degree, you earn $30,000 a year. If you have a bachelor's degree, you earn $65,000 a year. So that education clearly is a pathway to the middle class. But the people that need the pathway most are the ones that are furthest away from the middle class, which are generally speaking as a group are black and brown citizens. So where are they on that pathway? Well, they're in your public school system. DC public and public charter schools are 80%, 70% African American, 17% Latino, and 80% economically disadvantaged. If you go to the higher education part of that public education system, which is UDC, 72% of our degree-seeking students are DC residents. 60% of them are African American. What was it? 15% are Latino, and 40% are economically disadvantaged. But the pathway for them is incomplete, and the reason it's incomplete is because when the control board came through, they cut all the budgets of everything in the district to reset the future of the district. And if you listen to Alice Rivlin, who chaired the control board at the time, she'll tell you that she thinks the cuts to UDC were much too deep. In addition, since then, the district has reinvested in all of its major institutions in an attempt to turn them into world-class institutions. Parks and recreation, public and public charter schools, the libraries. The one thing that it hasn't reinvested in, which is really sort of the linchpin for the sustainability of all the rest, is the public institution of higher education, which is the University of the District of Columbia. It's the only one that has not yet been brought back. So we have a plan called the Equity Imperative, at least it's a proposed plan. And the idea is that we would regenerate UDC as the type of institution where every student can reach his or her highest level of human potential. For the last 2 years, we've been working really hard, 2.5 years, and we've had some accomplishments. We were supposed to go on probation with our accrediting agency, which comes by every 10 years. We ended up with the 11 commendations. We were on probation with the federal government financial aid operation. Now we're in good standing. Our last 2 audits have been clean, even to the point where the federal government waived our 133 audit this year because our audits have been so good for the past 2 years, and that's very unusual. We have a new board that is very professional and diverse. The leadership at the top level is all nationally competitive and well qualified. We brought in 63 new faculty members in the last 2 years, and they're all very bright and very energetic. Our challenge is we can bring them in, but we can't keep them, because when they perform well, the other institutions in the area see who they are and what they're doing, and we can't afford to outbid them for our own faculty. And also, we've been seeing these sort of neat national rankings, which are good for the type of institution that we are. For example, out of 2,660 or so colleges in America, we're number 99 in terms of upward mobility, which is the difference between what our graduates make compared to what their parents made. We're also, as you know, the number 6 clinical law programs in the country, right behind Yale, which is number 5. We're the number 10 HBCU in the country. Somebody rated us the number 1 community college in the DMV, which is real interesting because we don't even have a community college. We have a branch campus that we call a community college. But things are starting to show that we are becoming trustworthy stewards of public resources, which is what public institutions ought to be. And we have a plan. We have an overall strategy, which is basically to serve the District of Columbia. We have goals within those strategies which will be measured and implemented over the course of the next 4 years. And we know what it's going to cost. We have right now from the district a subsidy of $78 million a year. We'd like to ratchet that up over the next 4 years to $124.9 million a year. Now, to put it in context for you, as far as a percentage of the budget devoted to higher education, nationally it's 5-point-something%. In Maryland, it's 4.5%. In Virginia, it's 3.4%. In the district, it's 1.1% of the budget, of the local funds budget that's devoted to public higher education. And after our investment plan, if it is embraced by the mayor, and that's what we're trying to get her to do, even at the end of that, we will only be 1.78% of the district's budget devoted to public higher education. And even with the $78 million that we get, we know we generate about $313 million of economic activity in the area. So it's a good investment across the board. At the end of the day, we want to build a community that looks the way it ought to look, sustainable and resilient, but also equitable. And there really is one main pathway to the middle class in the district, and that is your public institution of higher learning, the institution of higher learning in and for the nation's capital, and that would be, as you know, the University of the District of Columbia. And what we're asking is that we had all of the ANCs from almost every ward visit us last Monday, and I think some of you all were there, and we're asking them to let the mayor know that it's time to embrace the public portion of the public higher education system in the district and properly fund the University of the District of Columbia. And the more support we can get, the more she will understand that this is truly her chance to have a legacy like none other.
Thank you. Thank you very much, President.
Yes.
And we do have a resolution planned for discussion later on today.
Good.
Ahead of that, I'm going to throw it over to Commissioner Dickinson, since this is in his district, to kind of kick things off, and then we'll go with questions down the line and then into the audience.
Good.
First, welcome again, and thank you for the hospitality for our ANC meeting here every month at UDC at the University of the District of Columbia. Also, thank you to your team, Ms. Juanita Gray and Mr. Thomas Redmond. They've been terrific, and I think speak well to the commitment to our community and the commitment to the district. As Commissioner Chakopchak mentioned, we do plan to pass a resolution later this evening in general support of the mission of UDC and generally for the mayor and the council to take a hard look at the budget request and generally supportive of that. Let me sort of ask a sensitive question. UDC is on an upward positive trajectory. People are always questioning all academic institutions as to where are they going. I think the equity imperative theme resonates. Advocate with the mayor, and who's coming out with the budget in the next month, and we need to get to the mayor.
In fact, she'll be on campus tomorrow. I hope you all know that. Okay.
Right.
Budget engagement.
How do we get a better feel for how the university is managed? What do the numbers really look like? And if we're at approximately 4,000 students today, if we're going to invest $700 and some odd million over this 10-year capital budget and increase by $50 million the operating budget, what does that mean in practical terms in your mind?
So in the PowerPoint, there actually is a sheet that shows how we think we can increase professional certifications and college level credentials over the course of the next 4 and 10 years. And basically we can double it in 4 years and we can quadruple it over a 10-year period. Now, I'm glad you asked that question, though, because when I was going through the presentation, I forgot a slide, which is that slide. A lot of people ask about the graduation rate, which is 17%. Let me take a minute to explain that. The graduation rate is based on a cohort of students that come in a given year and then graduate 6 years later. It's called first-time, full-time freshmen who graduate 6 years later. Now, at the University of the District of Columbia, we have a very small number of first-time, full-time freshmen. That's the first point to make. A lot of students who use TAG to go away to college actually transfer back to us, but they don't count toward the graduation rate. Part-time students don't count toward the graduation rate. So out of a class of maybe 1,200, we have 500 that actually count toward that official IPADS graduation rate. And in the bachelor's track, it's actually 35%, which is not great, but given what we have to work with, I've seen worse. Now, the other piece is that the community college, which is the associate's degree program, has a 7% graduation rate, which is not great, but I've seen worse. But because they're not separately accredited institutions, they count as one blended graduation rate, which is how you get the 17%. But let me say this also. The way we're designing UDC, it's really unique in the country in that I've never seen a university that has 3 different doors under one roof. We have a workforce training door that is free to every district resident. We have an open enrollment door that we call the community college. And then we have what is becoming a much more and more selective door, which is the Van Ness campus. So that over time, we'll be able to serve not only those students that come to us with educational deficiencies, let's say, but also, you know, as TAG fails to keep up with inflation, as out-of-state costs continue to rise, we think that everybody in the district is going to be looking for a high-quality public university alternative near to home, which is why we're designing the university to be able to accommodate every piece of the district. Does that answer your question?
It does,
Yeah.
for the most part, and I know after attending the meeting last week, I thought about the tremendous amount of money the district has committed to the capital budget for DC public schools. I mean, a great number, probably 90% or more of the elementary, middle, and high schools have been renovated, and I think you're spot on that the missing link now is UDC. But let me return to sort of a management themed question. You mentioned the audits that have been performed. I guess as I'm looking to advocate and thinking about a $750 million investment in the university, I guess I'm kind of looking for where the story is and where the audits are and why this is a good investment, not just because of the imperative piece, but that we, the university, are geared for success here. There's a need, but that there's a demonstrated proficiency or ability of the university to meet it.
Well, we've done what we've done. We've completely changed the management. By every external measure, I'd say that we performed. This issue of getting off of probation with the federal government wasn't a small thing. And the implications behind it, because it's all technology-based and people-based and skill-based, you have to fix all of that in order to be able to fix that one problem. And to do it in 2 years, I think, is a credit to the team that we have here. Keeping this campus running is a management miracle in my mind, and almost works against us. This building you're in now, as hot as it is, come here when it's 90 degrees. Because, Monday you were in a LEED Platinum building on Connecticut Avenue, but everything else behind that is the same campus that was here in 1974. So that our boiler system, which tries to pump cool air into a building like this, loses 70% of the air before it gets to the building. And this is not our worst building. We just had to close down building 41 because we know it's gonna blow and we can't have people in there when it happens. So that's the challenges we have. I know the history of UDC, and I know that there have been challenges, even to the point of people talking about UDC fatigue. And I get it. When you have 20 presidents in 14 years, or whatever it is, that's a lot of instability. But having said all of that, everything has its time. And, I think they hired a pretty good president with a clean record. I've brought in a very good team. We have a board that has done its job well. The team under the leadership team is slowly but surely getting better and better and better, even to the point where my board just approved a brand new performance and evaluation system for the entire university. So, is it perfect yet? No. But the challenge is this for me as a president. That people are starting to believe in the possibilities. I'd say we've gone from, and I'll tell you a story if you like, where we've gone from it's not possible at all to maybe it's possible, right? And people have a positive attitude on campus and off. But that positive energy is a funny thing. If you can't keep that momentum going, and if you can't keep moving forward, it's very thin ice, and it can turn on you. And so we felt like this was the time in an election year to make the point and try to get the mayor's attention on the funding that we need to keep the process moving forward. And we do have now, we have a separate PowerPoint called Financing the Imperative, which gives you a lot more detail on the money and talks about the consultants we use to generate the information and stuff like that. So if you want to get in that kind of detail, we have that too. We even have pictures of the ceiling falling on my chief operating officer's desk, as well as a picture of me that I sent downtown in my big Yukon hat when I was in my office working, and it was 2 degrees outside and 3 degrees in my office. So,
thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can I get a quick show of hands? Who in the audience is going to have a question? And up here? All right, I'm going to make a motion to extend the debate by another 5 minutes on this.
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous. Commissioner Allison.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
First, I'd like to welcome you, President Mason. It's been some time, and I want to commend you on all the work that you've done here at the university and for your leadership to make so many improvements, which we have witnessed very closely and for which we're very grateful. We talked a little bit about this at our recent Community Campus Task Force meeting, and I think it was a really productive conversation. A couple of questions came out of that we were interested in getting more information about. One of the things I was curious about is you mentioned, and I see in your presentation, one metric for comparing DC's level of investment to other states, and that's presumably, it's not labeled, but I think % of state budget is what that is?
Local funds budget, yes.
And I was just curious, what are other common metrics and how DC
Sure.
compares to that? And then my other question, which I'll just tee up so we can go quickly, is it wasn't clear to me the outcomes you talk about look really interesting. Are these projections contingent on
The
a particular
investment.
level of increased funding? And how did you come up with these somewhat ambitious targets?
Sure. So let me go to your metrics first, the comparisons. And I sent the financing the imperative PowerPoint to Juanita so she could put the information together for you, but just to put it in context. So nationally, the per student investment in higher education is about $30,000 a student. For us, it's around $25,000 a student. We know that, and these are the consultants that did the work for us, our engineers are paid 30% less than market in the engineering school. Our business school faculty are paid 40% less than market. On the whole, some of our liberal arts faculty are not paid too badly, but that's because the liberal arts school controls the union, the liberal arts faculty. But having said that, you know, when the mayor settles her union agreements with the teachers in the DCPS and gives them a 3% raise for the next 3 years, and I'm negotiating my contract with my union, it sort of sets the bar, right? The other thing we've done is we've run the metrics in terms of ratios. You know, how much is devoted to instruction, how much is devoted to management, and we can show you those ratios as well. But remember, the ratios are not about absolute level of investment. It's how we divide up the money given the investment we have to work with. Now, those goals are ambitious, but not as ambitious as they might seem. For example, on the graduation rate, right? So we talk about DC Up, which is where we give every graduate of DC public and public charter schools a scholarship. And if they're a valedictorian or a salutatorian or make a 3.7, they get a scholarship and free housing, right? We thought we'd have 6 the first year, we had 48. We thought we'd have, well, we didn't know what we'd have the second year, but that doubled to 108, right? But my point is this: what we're watching is a trend where we're moving more away from part-time students and more to first-time, full-time freshmen. And those first-time, full-time freshmen, for example, DC Up, their retention rate in the first year was almost 90%, right? And our retention rate overall has gone up 10% in the last 2 years. So those kinds of measures are the things that we watch. And we set up a special committee just on student outcomes, which is going to be completely data-based, and everything we do is going to work from a baseline in 2015 that we're going to track in terms of student outcomes over time. And student outcomes turns into retention and graduation, but it also turns into revenue. So,
I just have a quick comment.
Yes.
And I just want to say thank you for being a good neighbor to
Sure.
us at the ANC, letting us hold our meetings here, and being a good neighbor to everybody else. And Van Ness, the retail study and the other opportunities, you know, we're taking forward. We really appreciate it. And I just wanted to underscore one more thing, is that the request, once it gets done with, it would put your, I think, the commitment, we're talking about 1.8%
Right.
overall. And that is still half of what the state of Virginia, which is the next lowest in the region, you know, gives to their schools. You know, we've seen causes with the law school and with other things that when we make the proper investment in this school, it can do wonderful things. And so, you know, I think that's something we should all keep in mind as we're asking the mayor and our other elected officials to make this investment.
good, thank you. Other questions here?
Could you just say your name too before?
Yes, Michelle Lennon, I live on the street.
Okay.
You're missing the road.
Not to mention the metro. But I just want to comment about, and would love to hear your response. I don't know all the details and those who have a responsibility of good business acumen and checks and balances and where the money's going and all that. But overall, I think there needs to be more advocacy and truth to power. That here places out in the so-called progressive state of Minnesota, where they're having to do more and more bake sales to keep extracurricular activities going, is in D.C. decades ago when Marriott wanted to put that conference hotel up next to the conference center. They got what, like a $30 million subsidy or something? And I think it's time that our officials stop prostituting themselves for those who have huge waddles of money at the expense of this society finally moving out of the banana republic strata of both cultural and academic education and up to the best. Finland, France, for example, and dare I say, Cuba has a less high school dropout rate than America. So for someone who has lived overseas, has worked on the Hill and the White House, and every time I come back from overseas, I see more and more of a banana republic mentality towards civic engagement, towards where the money's going. And I think when it comes time for folks like you, all of us here, when we're finding out that, the Donald Trumps of Washington, D.C., and I will include the Marriott family, get subsidies when you're suffocating under this. And I think more and more, until this becomes less of a sheep culture, and talk to any French person who has lived there, and they will tell you how passive and accommodating Americans are to madness. And Donald Trump didn't happen in a vacuum. We've been at this for 300 years. I really think, because Americans generally as a society have a problem connecting dots, that there needs to be a broader picture and the ugly truth of where the money is going. Now, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt that your folks are doing all their fiduciary responsibilities where my hard-earned tax dollars are going. So with that, giving you the benefit of the doubt, and I'll do research, but I think there's a narrowness of discussion.
Was that a question?
I want your response. Because
Well,
I living in, and I was a Peace Corps volunteer in the so-called original Banana Republic, and it was corporate America who continues to run under.
Sure.
And I'm just
Sure. Yeah, I'm just going to let President Mason respond. I appreciate your comments. I'm going to let you just close out with the response. To
Sure.
that and
A couple of things. One, I still have revolutionary inclinations. You should read my blog on the UDC website. You'll see, that I have a perspective on the world that is probably much like yours. On the other hand, at this point in time, in this place, I have to do the best I can for the institution that I'm serving, which is the University of the District of Columbia, which is a part of the District of Columbia. So it's a fair balance for me between holding the people I work for accountable on the one hand, but also encouraging them to invest in what I think will serve them and this district well. Now, tomorrow, let me tell you about tomorrow, what it's going to be. It's going to be a engagement session. The mayor is going to lay out her priorities, and then they're going to sit around tables and they're going to have facilitated conversation. So it's not going to be a free-for-all, as you might imagine. But in those facilitated conversations, she's going to ask, what are your budget priorities? From my point of view, the more you all say UDC, the better a night that will be for the mayor. Okay? And I'm with you 100%. You can check us out.
In the leadership role is to be helping connect the dots, including if the mayor isn't getting it because she's owned by property owners who are doing nothing but making high-end university dormitories with marble tabletop as their advertisement.
Yeah.
Because that's where the money's going.
But we don't
we'll
have any
a chance
dormitories, just so
to
you
come
know.
and share our thoughts with the mayor tomorrow at the budget forum. I think we'll hear more about it in just a second. Do you have a quick question? We're heading right at the bottom of the phone.
Regarding tomorrow's meeting with the mayor, it has been advertised as focusing on senior services in this area.
Is that tomorrow? There was one.
Yes, tomorrow.
So we're going to get into the clarification on. Okay, I'm sorry. We're going to have somebody from the mayor's office in just a minute to talk about this.
The one tomorrow is in our student center.
Yeah.
At 6:30, but there's another teleconference on senior issues, which I think.
So I'm gonna. Okay. So I'm just gonna gavel this out. Blogger Mason, thank you so much for taking your time.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. And then I'm actually going.
Fly birds forever.
Thank you. We're going to do community announcements in just a second, but we're going to start out with some announcements from the commissioners. Commissioner Dickinson, if you could lead us on.
I have everybody in the room that I want to announce.
Okay.
So Ian Magger from the mayor is going to talk about the budget. Peter Norton from DPR is going to talk about Hearst Park. Fred Underwood is going to talk about 4250.
Mm-hmm.
So those are my announcements.
Okay. So we'll get some vicarious announcements for Commissioner Dickinson in just a bit. Commissioner Siddig?
I don't have any today.
Did you want me to do that update now?
I want you to do that. Let's see.
Yep, let's see.
Okay. Okay, I have one announcement. It's for actually our colleague Deirdre Brown, who's not here today. Recently, we've unveiled a plan on, or a page on the ANC 3F website. It's anc3f.com/forest-hills-playground. It is a one-stop shop for info on the playground of the street. She'll be adding more info, announcements, dates on cleanups and things like that. There's also a link on there to submit issues that people might be dealing with. It'll go directly to Commissioner Brown and also the main info at email address for the commission. So check that out. Again, anc3f.com/forest-hills-playground. Thank you.
So I have one quick announcement. There's been a rash of suspicious activity in the alleyway behind, in between Nebraska and 36th. There's been a couple of break-ins and stuff stolen out of garages back there. A bunch of people walking around clearly casing the joint. We've got video footage and things like that. We had a big community meeting. Lieutenant Stewart was down there and made a lot of really nice recommendations to all of the residents, calm things down a bit. And folks are getting together a neighborhood watch for that back alleyway with the help of MPD.
Great. And this is a good time as any with the warmer weather today to remember when you park your cars, don't leave stuff out on the dashboard. The best way to prevent crime is to reduce the opportunities for it. I'm sure if the lieutenant was still here, she would make that point as well. Moving on, we're going to open it up for the community open forum. We have this. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me, Commissioner. We have committee reports, and why don't we start it off with the grants committee?
So it's February. March is the deadline for grant applications for this cycle. So please, if anybody is either thinking about submitting a request for a grant or knows somebody that's submitting a request for a grant, the earlier that stuff comes into us, the better. By the time we get to the March meeting, we really want to see the final version of the grant request. If we need to iterate, we'll do it, because we're going to vote on these things at the April meeting.
Parks and Trails Committee, we did not meet, what was it, in February? But the former chair, Pat and I, and our vice chair, we did sit down and sort of plan out some of the issues and things we want to tackle for the year. So at our next meeting, we'll be laying out that agenda, getting input from the committee members, and mapping out sort of a program of work over the next several months.
Okay. And I'm going to invite Bob, or should he take off? Okay. I was at the last Streets and Sidewalks Committee, so I can talk about it a bit more. We discussed breaking up the committee and focusing on. And I'm sorry, let me correct that. Actually, let me just call Chair Dialing down here for a committee report on the Streets and Sidewalks Committee, and I will not have to wing it.
Great. Well, I was just signing a form from a volunteer from our survey. Helped us out with our survey last spring, so it's apropos. We've been meeting monthly. We had a meeting a week ago. I think it's safe to say we're continuing the work that we were set out to do. We now have a vice chair. Commissioner Siddig has joined us. So we are doing three things, I guess. We are continuing to input and follow up on the items we discovered in our survey now about 8 or 9 months ago. We are working with DDOT to hopefully track those and get them resolved, and we're having continued ups and downs there, but we're trying to find the right people at DDOT to help us. Second, we had made some recommendations to the Commission, to the ANC, a couple months ago, including the idea of advocating a study, a comprehensive study of the reversible lanes issue on Connecticut Avenue, and we're hoping to make some progress on that in terms of a resolution, hopefully in the coming month or two. And then third, we formed a few subcommittees, including one that would look into pedestrian and traffic safety along the lines of the issues you were describing to our MPD folks tonight. Any questions? Comments?
Why are the roads so bad in the city?
That's a good question. but the streets and
Sure, and that's, I mean, he's
Yeah.
let me just explain Bob's role. He's the committee chairman on our committee within ANC 3F. He does not work for DDOT, and he does not pay. Okay, so I think as in many large cities, we have to deal with sometimes bureaucracy, and we deal with the weather and the roads, and they deteriorate. We are focused on ANC 3F. No, it's my explanation, so please stop interrupting me, okay? So we are focusing on the streets and sidewalks within ANC 3F. I don't know if you were part of it, but we had a number of volunteers go out and collect a number, about 350 issues going on.
Roughly.
We are working with DDOT to follow up specifically on these issues and improve our streets and sidewalks.
they actually are filling the potholes, I can tell you that. They have responded to some of our survey requests, so we're making some progress. Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's now the community announcements part of it. I'm going to invite Ian Maggard down from the mayor's office to start. We have a lot tonight, so I would actually ask the second person who has an announcement to just take a seat in that front row over there, so I can keep an eye on how many people are left in the queue, and we'll move this through as speedily as quick as we can. I'll also remind you, when you come up to give an announcement, please give your name, spell it if Commissioner Malad asks you to, and we'll make sure your comments are in the minutes. Thanks, Ian.
Hey, I'm Ian Maggard, the Ward 3 liaison for Mayor Bowser's office. I just wanted to tell everybody really quickly about these budget engagement forums. Everybody seems to be very excited about. Tomorrow night, right here at UDC at the Student Center at 6:30 p.m., the mayor will be here. She wants to hear from you and what you want to have in the budget. Today, she actually had a senior telephone budget engagement forum. We had a little over 900 seniors across the city on the call. It was also live on DC 16. And yeah, I have flyers, and if anybody has any community issues or concerns, you feel free to reach out. I have cards as well.
Good. I'll be in touch.
All right, sounds good.
If I pay this kind of first roll taxes, I want first roll.
I agree.
All right. Any questions for Ian?
Mr. Maggard, thank you again for attending each of our meetings. I just wanted to raise a sensitive topic tonight about the Chancellor of DCPS, and I just got an email about an hour ago announcing that the mayor had accepted the resignation that she had requested from him. I wanted to do this as I don't know how many, maybe by a show of hands, how many adults or parents are in here with DC public school kids? Can you?
Former DC social.
Great. So let me just express my personal commissioner opinion about this. I think it's a tragedy, and I think the way the mayor performed and the way DCPS performed last week is incredibly discouraging, and there are a lot of parents and families that invested a lot of time. And the reason I'm mentioning it is because I know you communicate back to the mayor. For this to linger that long from last week, and for the incident in Parkland to take place, and the school shooting, and for the chancellor to just wheel out the platitudes in an email saying we've got metal detectors in our schools and kind of leaving it at that, and then following it 2 days later by using a government email system to announce his apology is ridiculous. And I hope you pass that on to the mayor. This was an incredible opportunity for the mayor to show leadership, and she failed. And I think moving forward, as we talk about security in schools, as we talk about the Ballou High School, you've lost the message. This last week was incredibly discouraging. It was an opportunity for leadership. I encourage the mayor to take a hard look at her messaging on this moving forward.
No, and the mayor was incredibly disappointed as well in the chancellor breaking DCPS policy. We actually right now have a
His policy.
Huh?
His policy.
Yeah, and no, definitely. So the mayor immediately opened an internal investigation to look at the actions of the chancellor. She found out from the Office of Inspector General, actually, that this occurred, and immediately asked for the Deputy Mayor for Education, who allowed it to happen, for her resignation while she further looked into it. We do have an interim chancellor, which is Dr. Amanda Alexander, who has been serving as the chief of the Office of Elementary Schools, and she's been with DCPS since 1998. Definitely the focus is on the students and finishing out the school year strong and focusing on planning for next year, which has already began.
Well, I would encourage the mayor to, and I think she may be sponsoring a town hall in the next week or so, to take a much more aggressive, creative, and thoughtful approach both to the school attendance and graduation issue and to the physical security of our students. The mere mention of metal detectors without addressing the mental health and other issues facing schools in this city and the country is a real opportunity for her, and I hope she takes it.
Thank you.
I would encourage, as a former social worker for two dysfunctional agencies in our nation's community, that we start reading what it takes to get through these schools. Because we're sending a message to these kids of distrust and not a place of caring and nurturing and academics, but it's immediately saying, you're one step away from the prison. And I think that the D.C. public schools, under various administrations, has consciously or unconsciously drank the Kool-Aid of a prison mentality. And I cannot begin to tell you the impact it has on our young people and the distrust towards adults. If they can't take care, it is abominable, both on the local level. What I witnessed, what my young charges had to go through to just get into play. It's the prisonization mentality of the less income economic population, and I find it abominable.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you.
Juanita? Okay.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shamal Jordan. I'm a public affairs manager for PEPCO. I actually just started less than 2 months ago, but previously I was a director of constituent services for Ward 6 council member Charles Allen and at-large council member David Catania. But one of the reasons joining PEPCO was their commitment to community engagement. So we're going throughout the ANCs, talking, addressing any type of ongoing issues, but keeping folks up to date, working with the ANC commissioners who are our eyes and ears for our neighbors, but addressing issues that are in the neighborhood, but also talking about ongoing issues and upcoming issues that are going on and projects that are going on. We have 2 big projects, which is DC Plug, that's already going on, and Capital Grid. And basically it's just trying to bring more reliable resource and service and electrical. As you guys see throughout the city, the demand for electricity is growing substantially. And the reason why we're building these substations and moving our power grids under, or lines underground, is to bring more reliable service to you guys, and also especially around in the Ward 3 area, you have a lot of trees and a lot of branches will knock down and take out power, and we're trying to alleviate some of those areas. So it's an ongoing project. It's going to be about a 10-year project. There will be some traffic concerns and some other issues, but we'll make sure the ANCs are addressed so they can make sure the community is fully aware. But we'll also make sure that any issues and concerns, I'll make sure you guys have my information.
Okay. Is there a point
Go ahead.
Is there a point person for ANCs, or are you the best contact?
Yeah, me.
Okay.
There's going to be several other, but I have 3, 5, and 6.
Okay.
So, and I'll have information.
Could you just give? Would you mind if we get
Yeah.
down in the minutes? Real quick?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is it possible? Is it easier to say?
Yeah, I'll get it in 2 minutes.
And I'm also going to send the email as well, but I can.
I'll just keep the card and do it.
But I can say for the record too, if you want me, if that's easier too.
Yes, please.
Jamal Jordan, Public Affairs Manager for PEPCO.
Your email.
It's Jamal.Jordan, and that's Jordan,
Yeah.
and first name JAMAAL at PEPCO.com.
Did we have any?
So I assume that we as a commission would reach out to you if we identified critical areas that we thought needed priority in terms of,
Yeah,
for
and then
example,
especially
37th Street where Hearst and Sidwell are.
Yeah.
as an example.
And I believe you already spoke with my colleagues Monica Cunningham and Linda Greenan. Yeah, prior to.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Did you have something?
Yeah, I did.
I know you.
So I understand that you're here to tell us DC Plug has been ongoing and funded and
Yes.
things like that for a long time. The Capital Grid project that you're talking about is relatively new.
Correct.
And I this is more of a comment than a question, but it's certainly clear that there are alternatives, very viable alternatives to this Capital Grid project that will basically put us in the direction of the future in terms of the grids of the future and things like that. So this is not a done deal, this Capital Grid project.
That is correct.
It's still pending before the Public Service Commission and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
We may or may not have something to weigh in on that issue here. So that's more of a comment than a question.
Oh, no, we definitely understand that, and that's why we're here, and we want to make sure we hear your comments and address any concerns.
Anything from the crowd?
Do you have a map of ongoing
Yes, actually, and I will give you my card. We have part of our Capital Grid, and we have certain regions where we can go specific to each neighborhood, and I'll give you my card, and I can make sure, or if it's easier to give it to the commission, and I can, if you guys give me your concerns, I can make sure we can have the map and the appropriate information so it's accurate, and you guys can have it.
If you want to send us that, I can make sure that Forest Hills Connection can get it as well. And if it's something that we can link to, or
it's If you just give me the specific, then I'll give you my card too, so you can have. Yeah. I mean, we have our own arborist and system that's going. But yes, to answer your question, and trying to work because a lot of.
Now that's not the case in the past. That all of a sudden you guys show up. UFA does not know in the neck of the woods.
Right.
So,
Oh no, I've heard that. I mean, in dealing from my previous position, that was one of the big concerns when I was, working at large and as Ward 6, because believe it or not, Ward 6 has as many trees as Ward 3. So dealing with these concerns was an ongoing issue, but that's one of the commitments that coming over here, that's what we're working on addressing, not only bringing the communications, but also bringing the connections with DDOT and making sure, because they're the ones that permit and have things over it, so making sure we have the coordinations and so we can alleviate some of these issues that are going, and you guys can have better convenience.
And I'm just going to add my voice. It's not just the forestry coordination; it's coordination all along. I mean, we've had multiple instances. It's not just your when we will have a road repaved that gets torn up so people can get under it within a year, and that's the roads are bad, but it's also they can be better if we're making smarter investments with them.
Correct.
And things
Yeah,
like that.
and cost effective to the city. I definitely understand. Yes.
Yeah, I would call that common sense to coordinate the right left-hand working together. But this is why we've got Donald Trump in the White House. That's one reason. Been working at this for 300 What was the profits that your for-profit company made last year, please?
I don't have that information, but I can get it back. And yeah, we'll actually give you my card, and I'll make sure you can connect you with the because we have a whole separate team, and I can have you connected with them.
It's kind of good to know the overall how much the big guys.
Well, I know my job is to make sure the community's engaged, so that's my things. I got you.
Number two, question. You're hard pressed to find any wires above ground anywhere throughout Europe, Western and Eastern Europe, and I will include some countries in South America. Talk to any, at a minimum, European. I'm not too sure in Canada. I've been here since I was a kid in Montreal, but I'm very familiar with Europe. Talk to any European and a couple South American, Argentina, for example. They're shocked at the tiki of Ireland, or far west.
Beautiful country.
Of the continent. One of the first things that they observe outside, why do we have all the flags up 724? Two, why do you have all of these retro telecommunication wires? Unheard of.
Yeah.
Unheard of. So you're talking about trees and branches and all of this? You eliminate
I've got a lot.
if you have an
I know.
And if other countries with ancient building going through the centuries, right? That they managed to do it with ancient layers, centuries of building and smaller roads and all this other stuff. They managed to do this decades ago. And yet here we are, another indication of one, the right left hand not working together, putting underground in, paving a road, and then the underground folks come in and put cables. So why is this not even being considered?
Well, actually, you're talking about the double pole effect, where we're going underground, and but those wires, and you got to talk with Comcast, Verizon, and we don't own those wires, so we can only control the wires that we own, and that's when we're moving the things underground. DDOT has the access to the poles, and when I know I agree with you, but I'm just saying we could.
So we need to cut down on the back. I'm sorry. I need to make a motion to extend the debate on this because we've hit it. I'm just gonna ask everyone to please just try to be concise in your comments and make specific questions. Okay, at this point I'm going to make a motion. Who else has a community announcement? Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to extend debate on this by another 15 minutes. That'll take us to 9:02, okay? But please, specific questions and concise statements, okay? Do I have a second to extend debate on this? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All abstaining? It passes almost unanimously. We'll go to 9:02. Okay. Thank you.
No. Thank you, Chair. And I just let the commissioners know, please, if you have concerns and issues, make sure you can send it right to the commissioners. We'll make sure we get your information. That's how we want to be transparent and make sure the information is getting to you in an appropriate manner.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you so much.
Oh, no problem. Juanita Gray, the University of the District of Columbia, and because of time, I'm going to go very quickly. These are Legacy magazines. Commissioner Millard, I will email you all the details. But we did have the Community Campus Task Force meeting last week. Two things that I took out of that the community is asking for. The first thing, the university supporting the ANC with on contacting DDOT about the sidewalk. So Troy Stovar, our COO, will be writing a letter in support of the ANC to get DDOT to fix the street or the sidewalks leading up to Merch. The second thing was parking in the neighborhoods. We've been told that our students have been parking more regularly in the neighborhood. So we are asking for a little bit more research from the ANC if they have specific streets, specific times of day, any additional information you can give us so that we can do the research and reach out to our students about that. So if any community member has that also.
Actually, I'm going to connect you with our streets and sidewalks, and we can all tag team that.
Okay. Perfect. Then lastly, the university does have their performance hearing Tuesday, February 27th at City Council, 1 p.m. So we are encouraging community members to come out and testify on behalf of the university. And then, actually, did one more thing. This Saturday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., we have a part of our Black History Month celebration. We have a Black Vendor Expo in the Student Center. They're all local Black vendors who'll be selling their goods, so we invite the community to come out and take a look and support your neighbors. Any questions? No? Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if I could compare to that. Hi, it's Teresa Cameron with Van Esprit Main Street. Just a few really quick announcements. We've just finished up our retail study with Bernstein and UDC, and we'll be unveiling that after March 15th, so stay tuned. We are working on doing an RFP for another pop-up in our great donated space from UDC, and that should be going out in another couple weeks. This Thursday at Acacia Bistro, one of our great partners, we have Jazz at the End. We have a guitarist, and it should be really, really fun. So I hope you come out. It's from 6:30 to 8, and they're going to have $5 margaritas, which could be great. No comment. I also wanted to mention that everybody should be checking their Facebook and Instagram. We're working a lot with our local businesses on getting them to post often, and several of them are having special spring specials. Lolly Gurris is doing 20% off dinners, and they have a great brunch. So all of that's being posted on our Facebook and Instagram pages. And then our farmers market with UDC is going to be starting early this year on May 5th, and we've got a couple of great vendors that will be new this year. One is also a gluten-free bread maker, as well as Ivy City Fish is coming back, and I know many people in the neighborhood really wanted them to come back. And we have many other things happening, but they're all on our website, which is VanNessMainStreet.org. Thanks.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me, ANC. I'm Peter Norden, and I'm with DC Parks and Recreation on their capital planning division. And tonight I wanted to give you a brief update on the Hearst project. I know some people have been interested in where we are in the process right now. I want to let you know that right now it's in DGS's hands. They are actually in the midst of getting the legal RFP issued. The original submittal has already been put through, and they're doing some revisions to get it out on the streets. They expect it to be fully issued, and this is for a contractor to actually do the work. So this should be in about 2 to 3 weeks that hopefully that RFP will be issued, and then we'd actually have a contractor on board in the next 2 to 3 months, if all goes well. As far as the actual project, we're expecting that this first, what we call phase 1, which is the parks and playground improvement, this will probably have all the permits in hand by the end of the summer, and the actual construction would then start in October. One thing that's been brought up is whether or not we would do the playground before that, and I can tell you that they're looking at that because the school has been interested in us not doing the work during the school year. So we will work with the school and their PTA on that. If it's a phased approach, we'll see how we can manage to do that. So at this point, that's pretty much all I can tell you. We will, as soon as we have that contractor on board, immediately work with the ANC to set up a new community meeting to introduce you to the contractor, and then to review the entire project. If you're interested in the next month or so, we could do another community meeting to review the project, just because I know there's been a lot of questions on hand. But at this point, not a lot has changed since the November, conceptual plan. But I'm happy to work with you.
So 2 quick questions, and thank you, Peter. I know we're trying to speed this along. Would you imagine the next community meeting would otherwise take place after the contractor is chosen, or as you're maturing the design plans that you might come forward in April or May or something?
So that would be the only reason. The contractor, like I said, probably won't be on board till the end of the spring, May, June. So that being said, we wouldn't have another community meeting unless there's a request from you for any particular reason.
I'll work with the Parks and Trails Committee to talk about our resolution regarding stormwater and the Idaho right-of-way and things of that nature, to see if maybe we can pull you guys together to that subcommittee meeting.
Yeah, and I can talk about that too. I didn't mention that tonight just because it wasn't on the original phase 1. As a separate item, we are working hand in hand, both DPR, DGS, and DDOT. We're actually working with DDOT to get what are considered long permits to install these stormwater implementations that we've looked at in the past. We'll actually hopefully do a much more aggressive approach than we've even shown in the past, but until we iron out some of the logistics with an MOU with DDOT, because it's technically a federal road, because it's a state street, there's some challenges to get the
with regard to Idaho Avenue right away.
Right. So.
Okay.
But we are hoping to do some major stormwater work there, more than what you've seen.
Well, we'll follow up on that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for coming out.
Sure.
Hey, Fred Underwood with Bernstein Management. Just here to give you a quick update on 4250s. So we've engaged an architect and are starting the design process in earnest. Hope to have conceptual plans early March 9th is the target date, after which we will share those with the community and invite feedback. I think we're thinking about maybe having another community workshop as the medium for that feedback, and then further refine the plans, and then hopefully get on your agenda for I think March 20th.
Yeah.
Where we'll invite the architects to come with us, present some more fully formed plans, and ask for your support essentially.
So you think you'll have the concepts ready March 9th?
I think so. Yeah.
And
that's
then,
the goal.
So would it be more helpful to have a community meeting devoted especially to this, or would you prefer time at our March 20th? It's just kind of that small window between the two.
Yeah.
We don't have to decide it now.
Yeah.
Just keep it in mind.
I'll leave that up to you guys. Whatever you think is most efficient. Okay. To be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm willing and happy to do both.
Maybe what we can do is have a community meeting, kind of a charrette or sort of just input. Somewhere between March 10th is that Saturday, so 11th, the 12th through the 15th that week. Just kind of like we did a couple of months ago.
Sure.
Just initial presentation of the design plans, any community input, concerns, and kind of gauge where we are at that point in terms of whether we're going to need a separate meeting for the ANC to flesh this out for a letter of support, or whether we could do it in 15 minutes with your architect March 20th.
Okay.
We don't want to hold you up, but
we
just want to make sure we're all being as efficient as
we
possible.
want to make sure everyone's aligned too. I mean, that makes the most sense. So, yeah.
Thanks so much.
That's it. All right, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Fred.
My name is Nick Deladon, and I am DELLEDONNE.
Thank you.
And I'm with the DC Grassroots Coalition, and I want to give you an update on the comp plan. How many are familiar with the comprehensive plan of the District of Columbia? All right, well then I don't need to say anything. It's 1,000 pages, and more recently, a 60-page document. The framework element has been published by the Office of Planning, and it eviscerates the key protections that we have in the comp plan, governing the development around the city of housing and density and commercial areas and all of that. I'm going to just tell you as an instance, on page 54, the language that describes the intent of the comp plan is that it is not strictly to be followed. The intent is not strictly to be followed. That's the intent. So we regard it as a real threat to our protections. There have been massive development programs in the district, like the Macmillan Park, which went on for quite a while and then was finally appealed to the Court of Appeals. And the Court of Appeals, looking at the comp plan, found language in there that said the citizens, the friends of Macmillan Park, the residents here, are correct. This has to go back. You have to change it. You have to do the environmental impact studies and all the rest that is required, because this plan that the Zoning Commission approved is going to harm the citizens. So that's it in a nutshell, and we're fighting that. But importantly, that plan, instead of coming to the ANCs for debate and discussion, instead of going to the public for a 60-day period of discussion, went by the mayor's hand directly to the city council to legislate. So there's going to be a committee of the whole meeting on March 20, I urge you to attend. I have a couple of flyers here. You should become familiar with what is the comp plan, its changes, and its impact, and all of that. I hope that we will have a town hall working in that direction so that the pros and cons can be developed. The language that I described to you about the change of the intent was recommended by the pro-developer lobby, Greater Washington. So you see, we have forces to contend with, and I urge you to become familiar with the issues so that we can protest effectively.
What was the name of the group that you said that recommended this language? What are they called? I missed it for the
No, it's no. It is the pro developer lobby, Greater Washington.
Greater Washington.
And other people.
Thank you.
All the amendments are identified with their author, and whether the Office of Planning either accepted the amendment or not, and so all of that is a matter of record and it can be traced.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And you brought some materials, right, to share?
I brought materials. Thank you very much. They're back here. You can take some of the flyers. I'll be glad to talk to you and keep posted with you.
And for those of you interested in this, we will be revisiting this issue as a formal agenda item at our next meeting, so please review the materials, and we look forward to a more extensive discussion at that time.
March 20th. Jay?
Hello, my name is Jay Thal, and I am the AARP liaison for this ward. I sometimes want to embrace a little more than this ward, I would say west of the park, because we do have an enclave of Ward 4. First, I'd like to, AARP reached out to me and asked whether I'd like to be a liaison, because I've been active in this community for some 50 years. Some of you know me from running one of the Boy Scout troops here. Others know me from the Board of Elections, because I run one of the precincts and I'm the early voting coordinator for this entire ward and other endeavors. My biggest opposition in this area, because I'm a senior, I would speculate that I'm probably the only octogenarian here, is my concern with seniors, and that's, as far as AARP is concerned, people 50 or more. And we, west of the park, are not getting appropriate services from our government. I would like to take exception to the President Mason, who said nice things about DPR. DPR is one of the more dysfunctional agencies in this area, as is the DC Office of Aging. This ward, this area west of the park, has the largest number and densest population of seniors in the entire city. Even if the retirees like myself, who live in this area, are probably retired a little more in more fortunate circumstances than other areas of the city. Nevertheless, if you go up to the Chevy Chase Community Center, it is the worst serviced community center in the city. And I've been to a lot, I've taken photographs of a lot, and right now your counterpart, 34G, has put forth a plan to close that down, renovate it, and it won't be available for any services, including the senior fitness services that Council Member Bonds and brought in that is run by the YMCA, not by DPR, not by DCOA. So one of the things I'm proposing, and I know I'll have some opposition here, because you like walking your dogs in this green space down here, but that's the most accessible 2 acres still in federal hands that would still have space for walking dogs, but have space for a senior wellness center, which is lacking in this district, in this ward, and a full-service community center. Because if you've ever gone up...
Are you referring to the Intelsat site?
No, it is not an Intelsat site. It happens to be behind the Intelsat site.
Okay.
It's that
So
green
we're-
space. The question is, what do you value more, people or dogs? And I had this conversation once before, that somebody wants to walk their dogs in that green space, but this area with the densest population of seniors does not have a wellness center, does not have a fully functioning community center. How many people go up to the Chevy Chase Community Center except to vote? None of you. Would it surprise you to find out that it does not have a computer lab? Or it does not have... Yes?
I was just going to ask if you all had considered the Walgreens as a secret.
Well, the Walgreens is fine, but, you know, if you try to fit something into a space that has been pre-designed, then it doesn't really work. Oh, and the ramp down to the parking lot is just incredible, too, isn't it? Have you ever tried driving there?
Yes.
So, I appreciate it, and I'd love to give you time at our next meeting if we really want to dig into some of these issues, but if there's a way we could access some of the... Do you have a website or a way to contact
I don't
you?
have a website on my own. I
the
should mention that if any of you in this tax season need some free tax advice, the AARP is providing it at the Chevy Chase Community Center on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So I have these brochures available. But yeah, I'm somewhat outspoken. I'm not talking for the AARP when I'm saying we need better services here. This has been my little dragon to ride. Or my,
No, I understand that, and I'd love to give you more time to talk about those issues. Why don't you and I think we've emailed, we can take it, we've talked about it offline. I think you said originally you were going to introduce yourself as the liaison for the AARP. So I just want to, if we can, we're bumping up against our time limit. And so
I didn't realize your protocol of lining up here, so I
understand.
Didn't have as much time as some of the other people have been afforded.
You've had about 7 minutes so far. So okay. So.
Well, I'm glad
You can just introduce
you
yourself.
mentioned gerontology, because that's not how DPR selected the person that they selected for the position that Mary Shea funded.
Thanks, Jim.
I just showed up, so to speak. I have been an inspector for the Department of Public Works for like 16 years.
I'm sorry, can I ask you to introduce
I'm
yourself?
sorry.
Say your name.
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to hurry up. Please forgive me. I'm Jacqueline Brooks.
Thank you.
And I'm newly assigned to Ward 3 as a solid waste inspector and recycling since November. And my job is to make sure you're educated and that you stay in compliance with your solid waste and your recycling. I have plenty of information here. If you have any questions, I can actually be on your website, I hope. If they have any questions, you have my number. Even if I have cards, if you would like that, because I cover the bottom all the way up to like Nebraska Avenue. So I'm here every day, 5 days a week. I don't see any familiar faces yet, but I hope to get familiar with the community. Can I help you? Businesses. We're commercial and residential. Okay, of course. Commercial and residential. I promote recycling, and I have learned that the majority of the folks here in Ward 3 recycle. I'm happy about that. The only thing I would suggest is that you place your cardboard inside your recycling bin that you have, not on the ground, not on the side of it, because that will cause problems for rodents and all that sort of stuff, because it can become contaminated, so you can no longer recycle. Okay, but this is some new information. These are magnets. This is new information that you can use to help you to learn the new things that we actually accept for recycling, such as pizza boxes. Those are things we didn't do before, but it has changed, so we now do that. So all this information will educate you on what you should and should not do. Okay?
Thank you so much.
All right, you're welcome.
How much of our waste is recycled?
I'm sorry?
How much of our waste, residential waste, is recycled versus thrown in the...
I don't have any numbers for you tonight, but I can get that for you.
Okay.
And I can share Ms. Brooks' contact info with everybody here for specific questions.
Okay.
Oh, we have one more from...
Yes.
Can you speak very briefly about plans for composting, food composting?
Food composting, I don't have the information on it, but with me, but it's going to be pretty big. I'm not sure, because I'm new in Ward 3, if you have any locations. I know they have them in Ward 6. You have a location, the farmers market here. Where is the farmers market here in Ward 3? 4340 Connecticut.
Saturday morning.
Saturday mornings. Oh, very good.
Is there going to be part of the
Yes, there's the residential program. They're setting it up because actually it's going to be enforced. So in long term, you're going to have to, compost.
Mr. Stahl.
Yes. So I have some information. I'm sorry.
I'd like to add, I think it's important to note that you folks have accomplished in the last month, I think, is that you are now accepting electronic waste 4 times a month rather than 1 time a month.
Oh, we've been doing that for quite some time now.
No,
The 4 times.
the message has not gotten out.
Oh, the message should be getting out. They send a press release out every week. If you check the DPW website, it's on there, because it's HHW. I actually work it, so that's how I know. I'm degreed.
Okay.
But it's there for all of your electronic waste. You come there, we have compost there that you can get for your garden. What else? The only once a month is the shredding. That's once a month. That's the first Saturday of every month.
Oh, I need my old apple.
Yes. Yes.
Coordinate with the parks, using and picking up the trash and recyclables in our parks or in our area.
No, I'm sorry, we don't. That's handled through DGS, Department of Parks and Refuge, DGS. If they ever get an overflow, DPW is always willing to assist, but that's not handled through us. Okay, that's good to know. Yes, of course, yes. I can pass that on. Okay, anything else? So there's, the tape was gone? I can, leave some stuff for you guys to take, and I know you'll just love these magnets. So.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
My name is Justin McCarthy. I represent the Put a Price on It coalition. We're a group of about 50, but still rapidly expanding environmental, business, and advocacy groups such as DC for Democracy. There were some members here from them. But basically, we have a proposal.
Sorry.
I'm
What's
sorry.
the name of your organization?
We're with the Put a Price on It coalition.
Thank you.
And we are seeking to introduce a bill, hopefully at the end of this month or the beginning of next month, that we will have Councilmember Grasso as well as hopefully Councilmember Che as the co-sponsors. Basically what this bill would do, so upstream we're talking the utility providers, so such as Exelon. They purchase their energy from a gigantic grid. That grid goes all the way from like Indiana down to North Carolina. And from that grid, the energy comes from several sources, renewable and non-renewable. Under our plan, if you purchase renewable energy, that would not be taxed. But if you're purchasing non-renewable energy, specifically, say, from a coal-fired power plant, that would be taxed in 2019 starting at $20 a ton, and that would continue to increase over a series of years up to $150 a ton in 2032. So what we're doing is incentivizing utility companies to divest away from fossil fuels, and then at the same time, the money that the DC government would get from that, we would rebate progressively to members of DC residents. And so 70% of that would be rebated progressively, 20% would go towards small businesses, and then there's a 5% would go towards another small business tax cut. And then there are also some other smaller proposals in there. So when you purchase a new car, if it's a gas guzzler, you would pay a higher title tax on that. So we're doing all kinds of things to incentivize that, while also we're concerned about equity issues as well. So say you're a lower income resident who already has a larger car for a larger family, those people would be granted exemptions, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, we're going around to a lot of the different ANCs in the neighborhoods around the city, and we're trying to get more support for this. Specifically, Councilmember Che, who is the chair of the Committee on Environment, has been very wishy-washy on this issue, and this is something that we're trying to get all of the ANCs in Ward 3 to sign a petition that would basically say this is very important to us and this is something that we want to be introduced.
So yeah, I know you emailed us about this earlier today. We'd love to dig into it more. If you want to send us more information, we can talk about perhaps making a motion or a resolution about this at our March meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can come back next month with more information, and hopefully we can sit there. And again, more than happy to answer any questions at that time. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
I do. I left my cards and my suit jacket in my car, but I can write it down for you. 1 second, please.
Well, is there an email address that you can quote to us that at least we can put in the minutes?
Yeah. Let's do Justin.McCarthy, McCarthy, at gp.org.
Great. Thanks, Justin. Okay, now I'm going to invite DC Water down. Thank you so much. I've got 917 on that. They're going to talk about rate meter issues and the Clean Rivers Impervious Area charge.
Good evening. My name is Tanya Hedgepeth. I'm the Construction Outreach Coordinator for DC Water. I'm here tonight with two of my colleagues, April Bingham and Frank Baylor. They're going to talk to you a little bit about the meter replacement program as well as rates and billing. I do want to make an announcement about an upcoming town hall meeting that we're having. It's for Ward 3. It's going to be on Tuesday, April 3rd from 6:30 to 8 p.m. We do not have the location confirmed, but we will be providing that information to the ANCs once we do. We have two locations we're trying to decide on which one we want. So we'll provide the location to you guys. We'll also post it on the area listservs that we have membership to and some other forums that we will utilize to get the word out about where it's going to be. But it's going to be on Tuesday, April 3rd, like I said, 6:30 to 8 p.m.
Okay. So yeah, if you just give us that info, we'll make an announcement at our March 20th.
Okay. Oh, and the other thing is, so you guys got this last year, so this is essentially what April is going to talk about initially. So.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, two topics. The first one, I wanted to just briefly mention the meter replacement program. We started this program about a year ago. The plan was to replace 85,000 of our small diameter meters in the city. We have successfully completed about 63,000 of the 85,000. We will be wrapping this program up in about the next 4 to 5 months. We've been going through the district at a rate of 5,000 installations per month. We're using a contractor to perform this work. You may have seen them in the environment so far. If you haven't, the disconnect process of when the water will be disconnected will take about 15 minutes for us to change out the old meter and put in the new meter. Along with this new meter, we're actually installing a meter transmitting unit Frank may hold that up for you to see. And we're also installing new water meter lids. So you'll see a new lid. Right now in the environment, we have a lot of the old armor cast lids, but we're replacing them with a black plastic lid, Bingham and Taylor. This promotes a better transmission signal for the meters that are underneath this particular lid. When we went live about 15, 16 years ago, we kind of set these meters in the ground and forgot about them. And so now the batteries in the MTU, this is the MTU, it's just short for meter transmitting unit. That particular device has a battery in it that's about 15 to 20 years. And so it's coming to its useful end. A lot of the meters are still transmitting. They will show the usage at the property. However, if we don't get a transmission off of that gray signal, we don't know how to bill you. So you may receive an estimated bill from DC Water. With this particular program, it's allowing us to correct those wrongs and actually bill people on actual usage. Okay? Again, we have about 4 months left on the program. It's been very successful thus far. Tonight marks our 25th ANC meeting. And so we are very grateful for the opportunity to be able to come out and share this information with you. Now that we have 4 months left, we really want to impress upon those locations where the meter is inside the home. 95% of these are in public space, so you basically won't know we're there unless we have to disconnect the water and you're about ready to step in the shower. We've had a couple of those instances. But those that are inside, we have to make appointments for. So we will be relying on some of the ANCs to help us get that message out in the last couple of months, to call and set up an appointment so that we can reach the meter inside the home, change that meter out, and we can bill you on actual read. So we'll share that information with you. If you have, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
If you have any questions or concerns about the meter program, I am the Deputy Program Manager along with Frank Baylor. He works with us. He's actually in the field every day with the actual vendor. It was important for DC Water to team up our own employees with the vendor so that they just wouldn't be working aimlessly in the community. And so if you have any questions or concerns, we're here to address those. Do you have a question?
You're basically, I'm understanding you to say that people that have indoor meters need to call you guys to make an appointment for you guys to come out and replace them.
So we're asking.
How do people know offhand whether their meter is inside or outside?
Like I said, 95% of these are in public space. But if you have, Frank, do you want to address the ones that are inside the home?
How do we know? How does a resident? Because you're saying if somebody has it indoors. Okay. I have basically, for other reasons, I know that mine happens to be outdoors, but I don't have any reason to have known this. Right. So as a resident, how do I know whether my meter is indoors or outdoors?
Well, you can call us.
Everybody, you want everybody to call you?
No, I don't want everybody.
Thank you.
I want everybody. But I was.
If you don't see this particular lid indicates that the meter is in the yard. If you don't see this, 9 times out of 10, your meter is in the home.
If you don't see it in the tree space, you don't see it out front of your home, get DC Water. Someone will give you the information whether it's located inside.
Okay, which means that we're going to be replacing it.
Right. Okay.
Where it is.
Bill people once a month to make a very clear message saying if your bill is estimated each and every month, then call us so we can install a proper meter. That's the way to communicate. People open their bill, they see that it's, that's the communication. Because otherwise, how does this message get out?
So that was one of the catalysts of doing this program. We knew when we started about a year and a half ago, when we did our town hall meetings 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, we had a lot of customers, about 30% of our customers that were receiving estimated bills. So we needed to put a plan in place so that we could start billing people on actual reads, charging you for what you actually use versus guesstimating the usage that was coming off of that meter. So we've used this platform here, the ANC meetings, to get the message out. We've we've put together a website that allows you to go onto the website and read about the program. We've done bill inserts, and a lot of information has been shared. But that is our number one goal, so that we can bill you on timely and accurate bills. Okay. The other thing I wanted to just touch on, I did not bring much information with me tonight, just what's in my head. It's about the Clean Rivers Impervious Area Charge, and I know some of you may have questions about that. What I will say to you is that the general manager, the acting general manager, George Hawkins, he did resign his position in December of 2017. We now have an interim general manager, Mr. Henderson Brown, and he is the one that will be performing all of the town hall meetings starting in the month of April. And so as Tanya mentioned, April 3rd is the one for Ward 3. But what I would say to you, when you look at your bill and you look at the charges that are on that bill, there are 8 charges. This is what I tell a lot of the customers that I talk to. There are 8 charges on our bill, and 6 of those charges we as customers can't do anything about. They're fixed fees. And you think about a cell phone bill. Before you even make a phone call, you have the Chesapeake Bay tax and some other taxes that are on the bill that are just there for the course of business and to take care of all the mandates that we have to do. On our bill, you can control, you as a consumer, you control the water and sewer portion of that bill. So take a couple minutes if you have a bill in front of you and do the exercise. It is a very large piece of the bill. That charge itself has grown exponentially since we started in 2009, and it will continue to grow, and that's something that our general manager will come forth and share with the individuals in the communities about what that charge is for, what we're doing. Channel 4 has run a number of series of stories on the charge itself. We're looking at trying to, based on what Mary Che has put forth to DC Water, about how we can provide some accommodations to cemeteries and churches. All of that is at our board level. I'm not, it's above my pay grade to talk about it, but I can tell you that it is definitely a large fee that has hit our customers. And so it is a mandate by the EPA that we charge this, it is a mandate by the EPA to build these tunnels. So, again, if the questions that you have, if you have specific bill questions, I can take those with me tonight. I have direct connections to those who work in the impervious area department. I can get your questions answered for you, get your specific bills, concerns addressed. So please use me as a resource tonight, but know that we'll come back in a larger form to address those specific fees about the correct charge.
So we do have some very specific questions about the impervious.
Okay.
I'm sorry, the impervious area charge. Shall we send? Yeah, we'll get to the public in just a second. It's the commissioner's time to ask some questions right now. Can we send them to you? And you can.
You can.
Send them. Commissioner Millard has been taking a very close look at this. I was under the impression we would have someone who could answer them tonight. Commissioner, how would you like to handle this? Can we email it, or would you like to hold on to this till the town hall, or could you have someone come to our March meeting?
We can definitely have someone attend the March meeting. That's not. We have engineers.
I guess here, this is the 3rd month in a row we've asked to talk to DC Water, and I was kind of expecting that this time we would get some answers about this. And so if we could have someone specifically come to talk about this issue next month,
we can schedule that.
I think it would be very helpful.
I can work with Tanya to provide a resource for that. That's not a problem.
That would be good. And I apologize if I wasn't clear enough about that in my emails with Tanya and Mr. Briggs.
There's. What will be helpful if you have a list of questions that we can kind of address do some research on and be better prepared so that
Okay.
when we come, it's a
Provide them in
it's a
advance.
greater
Is that it?
dialogue.
Yeah,
And-
I have no problem providing
Okay.
those questions in advance. The town hall meeting that you're talking about, this is going to be a general community forum, not specifically on this Clean Rivers Impervious Area charge.
I think a big part of it will be overall, but a big part of that.
About construction projects, it's about rates and billing. I mean,
Right, so it's about everything. But will there be an opportunity to ask some of these questions there?
Yes.
There will be,
And we do understand that there are a lot of people who have questions about the IAC, and so we do know that will probably take up a large portion of the town hall meeting.
Okay.
So they are prepared for that.
I would still like if we could have somebody here specifically in March to address those questions.
Sure.
for-
I've
for
got your
us.
email.
You can provide the
Yeah.
questions in advance, that would absolutely be helpful.
Sure.
Okay.
We'll hop on an email thread.
Let's iterate a little bit
Okay.
on what I sent around.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we'll go from
Okay.
All right, thanks.
And I can serve as that liaison support with
That's
Latanya
fantastic.
inside the customer service department to get you what you need.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any more questions up here? All right, Mr. Thor, we have got 2 minutes.
Most of us, for those of us who own our own homes, when we purchased that home, we inherited either tarmac or concrete driveways and things like that, which fall under the impervious surface issues. Are there ways of retrofitting, tearing out and retrofitting, or assistance for people who need such retrofitting, so that the water bill can come down, their payments can come down? Do you have the technical advice prepared?
So we work closely with the Department of Energy and the Environment they will come out and actually do a survey of the home. And if you've installed like a rain guarding or some type of retention system that will allow you to curb some of that water, they will provide us with what type of discount will be placed on your water bill on a monthly basis. So if you go to our website, dcwater.com, you can read about the program that DDOT offers, I'm sorry, not DDOT, but DDOE offers, as well as DC Water. It's not a lot of a discount, I'll be very honest with you.
4%, up
Yeah.
to 4%
Yeah, it's
of
not
the
a
Clean
lot.
Rivers Impervious Area charge,
Which is a very large charge.
which is about half your bill.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's just being very honest with you.
Thank you for your candor. Thanks for coming tonight. We really appreciate
All
it.
right.
And we'll talk more about
Thank
it
you.
next week. Thank you so much. I'm going to invite George Brannion down from DDOT. Do you want to tee this up at all? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
Here's some stuff. Commissioner, take a look.
Great. Let me just.
I'll tee it up. It was actually one of the first ANC meetings I came to 2014. George was actually there presenting a presentation on unsignaled, uncontrolled sidewalks in our ANC. Crosswalks. I'm sorry, crosswalks. And explaining some of the perils of them, actually, and why they're not as safe as they seem. Since then, he's embarked on a plan to improve that pedestrian and traffic safety throughout the ANC. George is going to give us a bit of an update on that, and then we have a resolution to help move that plan along that Commissioner Millard will be taking up.
Okay.
Yeah, so just tee it up very quickly. The specific item for tonight is related to the bus stop that's currently sitting at Connecticut Avenue and Cumberland Street. There's no traffic light there. And so part of the sidewalk safety plan is to move that bus stop to an intersection where there is a traffic light, which is on the hopefully northwest side of Davenport.
Yeah.
And so this is part of the longstanding sidewalk safety plan, and this is the piece that we're going to take up in I have a draft of a resolution tonight.
Yeah, so the corridor has a number of uncontrolled crosswalks that are very unsafe. When you have a road as busy and as fast and as wide as Connecticut Avenue, crossing where there's crosswalk markings but no traffic signal has been shown by some very rigorous studies to be extremely dangerous, about 8-fold more dangerous than if you just leave it unmarked. So what we're trying to do is provide more signalized places to cross the street on Connecticut Avenue, and so the Hawk signal at Ellicott is one of the pieces of that project, and then the removing some of these uncontrolled marked crosswalks where
where we can't put a traffic signal, a hawk or a standard signal, is the other piece of this, which tends to be more controversial because people tend to think that if you remove crosswalk markings, it's less safe. But on a road that big and that busy with 6 lanes and 30 to 35,000 cars a day, it's actually much more safe to go to a crossing that has a signal, but we want to try to provide more of those opportunities. So that's the overall concept. So one of the locations is Cumberland, where we have a shelter as well as an marked uncontrolled crosswalk. But a short distance away at Davenport is the bus stop on the other side, the northbound stop, is at Davenport, where there's been a traffic signal for many years, but not the southbound. So what we're trying to do is move that one southbound stop back up to the northwest corner of Davenport. I thought I would have an answer back from WMATA about the feasibility of fitting it in that spot. There's a tree that's hemming us in a little bit in terms of the 30-foot landing area that's needed. The one possible way around that is to cut back into the bank and put the shelter back there. My understanding is if it has a shelter now, that we would try to put that shelter at the new location. But that is the plan we're still trying to move forward with, is to move that shelter and that stop up to what we call the near side of the southbound side of Davenport. So if there are any questions. And so our folks on the transit side want an ANC resolution to do these kinds of things. So that's why I'm here, to the point.
Any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay. Questions or comments?
Actually, I'm sorry, I missed something.
Sure.
We were talking, we had communicated at some point, and this shelter business has to do with ridership.
Yeah,
Numbers.
there
You
is a
said you were gonna
ridership.
get us those numbers.
Yeah, I was unable to get them today, but this is one of those electronic shelters, digital shelters. So it's actually one of the more valuable ones. I think this corridor is very valuable to Clear Channel for advertising purposes. So I doubt that they would want to get rid of that shelter, even if under the new rules, which I think is 100 boardings. I don't know where the stop is in terms of that metric, but I'm going to move forward talking to our transit people who basically tell Clear Channel what to do on these purposes. If we move something for safety purposes, Clear Channel has to do it. And that's what I've been told. So I'm going to move forward on that principle, and that we keep the shelter. Exactly how it fits in up there is a little bit of an outstanding issue, but that's the idea.
Okay, great. David?
I just had a question about sort of what kind of, I use the word signal loosely, what kind of signals you're trying to give drivers that there are crosswalks, other than the lights up above. I mean, are there special, I've actually seen special paints that are used that are almost 3D that elevate the crosswalk. Yeah. What other more advanced crosswalk techniques are you guys looking at?
Well, we have a sort of a hierarchy of treating uncontrolled crosswalks that are brought in as part of the pedestrian master plan back in 2009. And that is, you start with going to the higher visibility markings, and then the diamond side of street, the diamond pedestrian warning sign with a little down arrow. That's sort of the basic treatment for high visibility. And then depending on the next step, depending on how wide the road is, you can go up to those rectangular DC law, stop for pedestrians signs. That's sort of the next level up in terms of a more aggressive sign to try to tell motorists. Then after that, we go to what we call the rapid flashing beacon, which is, we have about 13 or 14 of those in the city, where they're small LED rectangular flashers that are very intense and they're very focused at the driver, oncoming driver, and those are pedestrian activated. That can boost, that has been shown to make a pretty big jump from, say, if the baseline of the number of cars, in my experience, I've done a lot of step-out surveys in the district at uncontrolled crosswalks, and it's about 30% of drivers will stop for you. If you show your intent to cross, step out a couple feet into the crosswalk, about 3 out of 10 drivers. With these flashing lights, I've seen go from 60 to 90%. If you want to see an example in Ward 3, it's MacArthur Boulevard at U Street. I've done step-out surveys there, across the street there maybe 60 or 80 times, and we get 90% compliance. The drivers are used to it. They now know what's happening when they see the lights. So that's, and then the next step from that, and it's really for the big roads, is the hawk signal, which is just another type of red light pedestrian signal for drivers. I know people complain about it, but it's the only tool we've got. A standard traffic signal requires a different warrant, a different threshold of the number of pedestrians to warrant it. and it's about 135 to put in a standard traffic signal just for pedestrians. For the Hawk signal only requires 20 pedestrians in the peak hour, and that's a huge difference, and it's a great new tool. Regardless of how some people don't know what to do with the flashing red phase, they've been very safe. We now have 17 in the city, and we're more on tap, and they're working.
Thanks.
Oh, but actually, to your point about those 3D things,
Yeah,
those, unfortunately, those are not allowed by the federal manual on uniform traffic control devices, which pretty much locks us into the color and the type of striping that can be used for a crosswalk. It's we got really in trouble with Federal Highway about that crosswalk down at Gallery Place, the Dragon Art. I thought we had worked through that, but we actually had to sort of change our MOU to let it sort of deteriorate after 3 years and not maintain at 5, because we got called into the office basically on that. And this is the reality: is that in other countries, some of these things, rainbow crosswalks and things like that, are. But the trouble is, the Federal Highways manual, the traffic control device team is headquartered in Washington, D.C., and they live here and drive through it and move through it, and every time we try to do something outside the rules, they find out. If we were out in Michigan somewhere, we could do things. Yeah, that's the reality.
It's also the culture of the inalienable right of cars over people.
And that's a hard thing to fight too, and we work on that with education and enforcement. And in fact, MPD was out on Bladensburg Road today in the Trinidad neighborhood doing step-out crosswalk enforcement. An officer wears plain clothes, steps out in the crosswalk, and if the drivers don't stop, they give them tickets. They're doing that tonight. The sergeant informed me, so they are trying to do that.
With the block intersections, I used to look at Gallery Place.
Yeah.
Tracy, you had a question?
Good stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have two questions.
Yeah.
One is, why, I understand moving into a signalized intersection, but I'm not sure about the speed of that, especially since I know that we've looked at putting bus stops not just before an intersection, just after, because we're worried about cars turning right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like on the bus, but in front of it, perhaps not seeing pedestrians or then crossing the street there. And that street in particular, in the morning, I see a lot of drivers pull off from Kennedy Avenue, go to Gridlock, and cut through Nebraska on Davenport. And so I foresee a lot of potential conflicts. And I wondered if that was part of the study.
Well, the pulling in front of buses and turning right in front of an already stopped bus, it is illegal. It's been illegal in the district for some time. We would prefer a far side stop, but we can't because of the driveway that's there. And there's two trees between the two driveways. They're too close together to get the loading zone or the landing pad area. So there are a lot of near side bus stops in the district, and they don't, as long as there's a signal there, the safety of pedestrians is usually pretty good. I'm not sure exactly what countermeasures we can put in for that, but there are a lot that are already that way on Connecticut Avenue. I think we can always try to when it opens, when we move it, we can get MPD to try to do a little spot enforcement. Sergeant McElvoy is always really up for that. Yep. Oh, this is a sordid and sad tale. This keeps missing the warrant. And we're, I don't know, 4 pedestrians short, 3 pedestrians short. We've counted it at least 3 times. I know. Oh, believe me, it's the how many people swam across the river before you built the bridge situation. I totally understand it. This is the federal guidance. It's never been fair for pedestrians, honestly. It never has been. We were going to do a rapid flashing beacon on steroids there. We're going to put the poles in that could support a Hawk signal, but put rapid flashing beacons on the side and on the top. I was still not going to sleep really well at night thinking about that, because again, it's not a red light, and that we generally wouldn't use that tool on that big a road. We want the red light, but we thought, well, let's maybe it works better enough that we get more peds and we can count and get the 20, and then we can convert it relatively easily convert it to a hawk. Now the Federal Highway Administration has taken away the approval of the rapid flashing beacon for a patent reason, not because it's not safe and not effective, but because there's the guy who innovated it patented it. It's a long sordid tale, but we can't install any more. So we're still up in the air about Chesapeake. Believe me, I would love to put a standard signal or a hawk signal there, but right now we're just in a wait and see about what. Maybe we'll count again in a few months in this spring and summer and see if we can just get, and maybe I could find out when that date would be. And yeah, if I could, I would. I've never been told that.
An ominous commenter on that Horse Hills connection.
Piggyback question to that.
Yeah.
I know it's really important for the pedestrians, because that's why we love a hawk at Chesapeake because of the school and the park.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the playground. Yeah.
But there is, in the last year, there have been 5 accidents at the Chesapeake intersection where the cars are trying to jump out in Chesapeake versus Davenport to miss the light and miss all the traffic. So does that have any ramification on putting?
It does. It does. As long as we've got those in the database. That this happens sometimes where people say there have been a lot of crashes, and we go back and look, and we can't find that data. We don't find anything like the numbers that people say. But there is a part of the warrant is crashes that would be modified, a crash risk that would be modified if a traffic signal was there. So it's possible. It is one of the factors that the traffic engineers would consider for a signal warrant. I'll go back and ask. Right. There should be a report on them then, yeah.
And some, they're not fatal, but they've been to the hospital.
Yeah, they can't get a gap, just like the pedestrians can't get a gap big enough, and so, yeah. But, yeah, okay.
And I would like to commend you on taking the crosswalk at Appleton away. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I've been for it for a long time on piggybacking on Tracy's question. The Cumberland shelter has worked very well. It is at a unsafe crosswalk.
Yeah.
And there has been some pushback because of the trees, etc. And Connecticut Heights is on private property.
No, that's we have Connecticut Avenue is typical state street. We have 120 feet of a right of way.
So
yeah.
You can go into their
it's an impact and the adjacent property owners would have, would be stakeholders we'd have to talk to.
Tracy is pointing out
about the turns off of Connecticut in the morning.
That is a very difficult turn, mainly because of a huge big tree that nobody wants to come down.
Yeah, that's close.
Corner. But it does present some problems. So I hope that's what you look at.
Oh yeah, no, WMATA is the one who has to agree to put the stop there to make it ADA compliant, so they'll use it. So and then we would build it.
It makes sense at the light, but
yeah, but fitting it in, right? That's what we're trying.
So we also have a resolution that Commissioner Milad is going to talk about. I'm going to make a motion to extend debate for 5 minutes to discuss and vote on that resolution. Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? You're abstaining on your own resolution?
No, I voted.
Oh, you did? Okay. Passes unanimously.
No, I oppose.
You oppose?
I oppose because I would like to make a friendly amendment just to pass the resolution without discussion.
We need to, there's some stuff in there that we definitely need to change that just come up. And I'll start talking about, so the new bus stop will not have a shelter?
Will have a shelter. So that section should now read, the new bus stop will also include the installation and move of the existing shelter.
Okay. Everything else looks fine to me. Do you have any other changes?
No.
Okay.
And so with those changes, the active clauses here are therefore be it resolved that ANC 3F approves of the segment of DDOT's crosswalk safety program calling for the move of the WMATA bus stop from the west side of Connecticut at Cumberland to the northwest corner of Davenport. And item 2 approves this segment of DDOT's crosswalk safety program calling for the removal of the crosswalk markings at Connecticut Avenue and Cumberland.
Yeah. I'll second
that. So I move that we pass the resolution.
I'll second it. We're going to make a motion to consider it. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you very much, George.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
George, I have one question. Could you, sorry to ask, could you give us any input on the window crosswalk across Connecticut in the south?
Oh, nothing's been done, huh?
Nothing's been done.
There we go.
It should be. I'll go back. Yeah, that doesn't hurt. Yeah, we're adding. There's no south side crosswalk at the signal window.
They've been told it was supposed to be last summer. Then it's supposed
Yeah,
to be
I thought they
November,
had it done that
and now
already.
we're into almost March.
Okay.
We would love that to be done.
Yeah, me too. All right, I'll check on that.
Jordan. We have somebody from DCRA here? Great. So we are going to discuss zoning inspection, the permit process. I'm going to let my colleague tee that up for us.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Wiley, for coming. Throughout our ANC, and particularly within, I'm most familiar within my single member district, there's been a number of new constructions. Some of them are raises, houses have been raised and new construction going in, and others are renovations to existing houses. They perceive to people in the neighborhood that these houses are very large, and questions have risen about how do we know that they are being their zoning is within right, that they're being inspected, that they're in compliance with zoning. And so I've asked Mr. Wiley from DCRA to come and speak to us about what the process is, but also if people have questions, who do they go and talk to, how do they get answers if they perceive or have a concern that there's been a non-compliance issue.
Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Andrew Wiley. Last name is spelled W-I-L-E-Y. I am a plans examiner with DCRA. It's the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. That encompasses many things. It's professional occupational licensing, inspections and compliance, as well as the permit operations division, and that's where I fall underneath. I specifically help run the homeowner center. What we do is basically take some of the smallest jobs that homeowners have, and what we try to do is basically simplify the process for people that are not architects, are not engineers, are not familiar with the construction permitting process. And what we do is we try to simplify it. It's myself and my coworker Verinder Bogle. It's the two of us, and what we do is help facilitate a lot of the smaller permitting processing between different agencies. Our office is down on 4th Street, down by Waterfront Metro, and in our building we have a lot of different agencies down there that work with us towards processing your permits. It could be the Office of Planning or Historic Preservation, DDOT, which basically administers the construction over your streets, your sidewalks, and the public space in the front, as well as DOEE, which is Department of Environment and Department of Environment and Erosion Control, and what they Energy and Environment, excuse me. What one of the things that they deal with from the building side is soil erosion, and that's really kind of a critical thing because we don't want sediment getting down into our sewer system and to the point where we have to dig it up and do those kind of expensive repairs that tie up the streets. So specifically, where I work for is the permitting side. So there's some questions about particular properties that they may be raising a house and then putting in a brand new one that's much larger, and I believe what some of these people are feeling like it doesn't fit the character of the neighborhood, essentially, of what's there. One thing to be checking for is before they're raising that house, make sure that you see a raise sign on the structure. It needs to be posted for 30 days, essentially, before they're allowed to demo it. You in your neighborhood see structures that are being taken down without this proper notification procedure in place, please reach out to 442-STOP, give our inspections agency a call, and they can come down and check to make sure that the proper permit was put into place. Part of the raise process is notifying all of the different agencies that are required. Some of them are for rodent control, for instance. Sometimes when these structures go away, if you have rat burrows and things like that, we want to make sure that those are controlled before that demolition takes place. So again, if you feel like there's something going on that is outside of the scope of permits, please contact our inspections. But to get to a different part of that question, though, if somebody, your neighbor, for instance, buys the property, then pulls a raised permit, and then puts in new plans for permit to build a new structure, if everything undergoes full review, and they do that as a matter of right, there's not necessarily a lot of recourse for you as a neighbor owner if you just don't like the structure. One of the things, I was hoping I could get a zoning reviewer down here. I don't work for the Department of Zoning, so we're separate entities, but there is a provision in the code that specifically deals with the appeal process, and it's under section 112, review and appeals. And what this states is that you can get a review or an appeal of either a zoning decision or even a building official decision from the permitting side of it. If you feel like there was something that was done in error, there is a process for that. My suggestion would be, if you have an individual case in mind or something like that, reach back out to Crystal Robinson, maybe copy myself. This isn't my primary function, but I would be happy to get you in touch. I think that the people to talk to, I would probably start with maybe somebody from the zoning department, a zoning reviewer, but there's also, we have an attorney on staff with the zoning department, Max Tondro, I think would be a good resource as far as the legalities of some of these structures. I mean, the important thing to check first is to make sure that their proper permits are being posted when they begin construction, making sure that their permits are visible, posted. If you're a neighbor and somebody's excavating next to your property, they should technically be notifying you. And if you've got large excavations going on next to you, really close to the property line, and you haven't been notified, there's another reason to get in touch with us as well. Again, I deal with more of the homeowner center scopes of work. Is there anybody in here that's looking to pull a permit here in the next couple of months that just needed questions on how to do that? I want to make sure that if you do, that I at least reach out to me. Okay, and if not, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you all for questions.
Are you able to speak to inspections once the construction has started? To what's the process to ensure that the builder is in compliance with the permits?
So there's when a building permit is pulled, it must be inspected. That's a separate division from me, because we're like a left hand and a right hand. We interact more when there's illegal construction taking place and there's information sort of going back and forth between us. But I don't have that information. You were in your email, though, you did ask for how do you obtain the records for some of these prior approvals and things like that. If you come down to DCRA, there is a records room on the second floor, and you can obtain your application, your drawings, your building plats. You can also find out about the inspections as well as the review cycles, if things were held for correction when they were under review. Why were they held for correction? And those can all be, all those records can be obtained on the second floor of our building down at DCRA, 1100 4th Street. So.
And when you say your record, can you only obtain for your own property? Or is
No, it's a public record. Basically, every permit that comes in, it becomes part of a public record, and anybody can come down and request that record. That's a good question, but TOPS is actually a separate permitting agency than ours because that's public space, and so we actually have two different permitting systems. One is for private property, and that's the one that I deal with from the DCRA side. The TOPS portion is basically going to cover your public space. So if you've got people that are building out by the sidewalk, maybe cutting the curb for a new driveway, anything that is out more towards the front of the sidewalk area in that public space, that's where you're going to see those permits under the TOPS system. That's correct. That's correct. Yes. That's correct. All of that is a public record. Sure.
Yeah. So some of the questions that our single member districts border here, and some of the one of the buildings in question is sitting right on the line, and you said that if somebody is doing something that's a matter of right, there is no recourse. Where can we if we have a question about a specific house, what's the best way, the most efficient way, other than rooting around in the zoning regulations to find out what is a matter of right? Because there's one property that we're thinking about that it used to be a one-story house, and essentially they're building a 3-story large structure.
Do you know what the zone is?
What's the address?
I don't remember the.
Well, here's what I would tell you. If you okay,
Yeah,
so
it's single family. I don't remember
what my suggestion is, if you've got a specific property in mind, please just send me an email. I'm not the person that's necessarily going to solve it for you, but I will get you in touch with the people that you need to get the information you need so that your constituents are informed. And I would be in my email. Commissioner Rutenberg's got it, but it's andrew.wiley@dc.gov.
So you would volunteer to be our liaison?
I'm not going to be able to solve every problem, but I will connect you. I will absolutely connect you with the people that can answer your question. I'd be happy to do that. Again, I work for the Homeowner Center, so I work for the Permit Operations Division. So I'm a plans examiner. I read building plans all day long and read code. I am part of DCRA. The Homeowner Center is a division that's underneath the Permit Operations Division, which is a entity under DCRA. So our job is to make sure that the minimum life safety standards are put into place for all construction on private property. The building code is basically the worst building you're allowed to build by law. So that's what we hold people to. So it's like getting a C on a test. That's, yeah, it's www.dcra.dc.gov, and through that, our Homeowner Center is on there as well. Yes.
Looking for a job?
Any other questions?
Okay. Anything else? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming.
About that.
Moving on. I'm going to have.
You'll get a few of those emails from us.
I'm going to have our former colleague, Mary Beth Ray, and now with Van Ness Main Street, come to talk a little bit about that LID project along Connecticut Avenue. I'm going to just tee it up. You know, in the past 7 years, there have been 3 very comprehensive studies about the streetscape. They all dealt with myriad items and potentials for the streets from basically Albemarle down to Van Ness. But we have plans. We're looking to have action. This could have a huge impact on the communities and the shops in which we frequent, and also the spaces off it, like Soapstone Valley Park, which is just downslope from this. So, to tell us more about it, with Mary Beth.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Jakopczyk, and it's really a pleasure to see my former colleagues and my replacement, who is doing an awesome job. Thank you, Naomi. I'd like to introduce some of my colleagues. This is Patricia Davies, former Commissioner Sally Gresham, former Commissioner Marlene Berlin, and of course, our amazing Executive Director, Teresa Cameron. And special kudos to everybody who's still here after a very long evening and high temperatures. So I was thinking, as we talked about erosion and some wonderful projects in Europe that make us look really lame, about cars taking priority over pedestrians, crosswalks, traffic, aging in place, a wonderful tenet of AARP. And I was thinking about all of those different things that we heard about tonight and how they all really connect to this particular project that I want to tell you about. So it's really an interdisciplinary project. So Pat, Commissioner Jakopczyk referred to 3 studies, and I think you all have these online already, but if anybody is interested in looking at them, I brought some copies. These were 3 studies that were undertaken by the district Office of Planning to figure out how to make Van Ness more environmentally sustainable and more economically vibrant. And not surprisingly, all three studies come to the same conclusions. So this was the first study that was done in 2011. The Shades of Green study and the Commercial District Action Strategy were done in 2016. And I want to just read a couple of things to you. I'm slated for 20 minutes, but I'm not going to take 20 minutes. So this is from the Shades of Green, Green Infrastructure and Pavement Removal Strategy for Van Ness. The project study area has many challenges as well as opportunities. Wide expanses of excess paving, inconsistent streetscape materials, and a lack of buffer between pedestrians and traffic all make parts of the study area inhospitable to pedestrians. In other areas, sidewalk paving has obstacles in areas of disrepair, complicating pedestrian accessibility. The location of the main pedestrian walkway varies from block to block, resulting in indirect connections. Finally, heavy concentration of utilities on both sides of the road, a byproduct of the metro line and the historic streetcar alignment, creates challenges for locating green infrastructure and new trees. And just on a more optimistic note, the Van Ness Commercial District has the potential to improve its retail offerings and public space while showcasing world-class sustainability measures by leveraging its substantial daytime population, accessibility, and the well-established surrounding neighborhoods. So in short, that's what we want to do, is we want to correct our environmental problems that have led to erosion, pollution of Soapstone Valley and Rock Creek, and make this a more attractive pedestrian area, which ultimately will drive more traffic, more economic traffic to our shops and retail, ultimately contributing to our taxable base rate, which is actually low to comparable areas. So we have challenges, economic challenges. Our businesses are experiencing flooding, causing some to leave and some to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in repairs. Park Van Ness, our brand new beautiful building, just spent $300,000 repairing flood damage from the August 15th flood, and I actually have a video clip of that as well. We need a functional and aesthetically appealing streetscape to attract long-term development. Environmental challenges include the large areas of impervious pavement and steep slopes, which cause flooding, polluted runoff, erosion, and death of the tree canopy. These problems, of course, threaten Soapstone Creek and Rock Creek watershed. We have paving obstacles, indirect connections. Wyndham, of course, is a great example of that. Inconsistent streetscape materials, the brick, of course, we talked about earlier with access to merch. Undefined pedestrian zones due to wide expanses of excess paving. Heat retention in summer due to excess paving and lack of shade trees and other greenery, and a lack of a buffer between pedestrians and traffic that make this area inhospitable to pedestrians and cyclists. Van Ness, of course, is a transit hub, which further exacerbates these challenges and necessitates implementation of the solutions. We have, George used the number 30 to 35,000 cars a day. WMATA's estimate is 37,000 cars a day. Connecticut Avenue is an evacuation route, and an excellent article Marlene sent me the other day has an article by, I think, a former EPA scientist talking about how the increase in temperature is only going to exacerbate our flooding problems. And when Connecticut Avenue floods, we actually lose 2 lanes of traffic, and it's an evacuation route. So there are safety problems as well. The proposed solutions are all in these studies that the city has wisely invested in. It includes things like permeable paving, a planning zone, infiltration area, sidewalk zone for pedestrian movement, outdoor cafe zone, plant zone for trees, ground level plantings, and structured soil. Past projects and experts who we have talked to, including other Main Street directors, people from DDOT, the Office of Planning, and also the DOEE, estimate that this is going to cost about $1 million per block per side of the street, plus more if infrastructure has to be moved. So as dramatic as it sounds, they are estimating $10 million as what we should request when we ask the city to implement these plans. If you put that into context of a 3 to 4 year project, DDOT's budget during that period is like $440 million. So it's not a large percentage of DDOT's budget. And as my husband said, I was talking to my husband about the financials. He's the financial guy in the family. And he said, you know, DDOT's going to spend that money. And if Van Ness doesn't get it, it's going to go to Georgetown or somewhere else in the city. So I think that's one way to look at the financial aspect of it. Van Ness, we're told that one of the things that DDOT wants to hear when we make our pitch is they want leadership and they want consensus in the community. So, of course, that's one reason I'm coming to you all, because we would appreciate your leadership. And we have already reached out to property owners and businesses, and that would include small and large property owners. We're very fortunate to have the owner of Acacia Bistro and the owner of Calvert Woodley on our board. We work hand in glove with UDC, and we're, of course, always grateful for the cooperation and the many benefits that UDC contributes to our community. But Van Ness Main Street, in short, is willing to play the leadership role in coordinating with you all and driving consensus among other community groups as well. So there are some links on here to other projects if you're interested in that. I think, in short, the outcomes that we want to elevate the functionality and appeal of Van Ness's commercial, residential, and public spaces to attract business and people, ultimately creating a showcase of economic vitality and sustainability. We want to create a safe and environmentally responsible streetscape that enhances the pedestrian experience and supports patronage of local businesses. We hope to improve access to the metro and other features that define Van Ness as a transit hub and transit-rich development, including affordable housing, of course, and substantially expand the city's tax base by creating more assets that will nurture business, create more jobs, and serve the needs of district residents. So that's all I have. I did prepare a draft resolution supporting that, and however you want to handle that.
So yeah, we've circulated that, and we can discuss that in the interest of building the consensus that you talked about. But do we have any questions? Well, you start.
So it sounds like it's $10 million, and in the Van Ness Main Street proposal and the rationale, it talks about $10 million over the next 3 years. Can you help me understand that 3-year concept versus the resolution that talks about $10 million in FY19?
So the resolution was drafted before I learned about the 3 year. Sorry,
Okay.
Happy to make that change.
So what would you recommend as the change?
The 3 years, yeah, I'm sorry. I should have gone back and changed it, and I completely forgot. So, yeah, fiscal year 19 is when we would ask for the money, but it would be over 3 years. Marlene, do you want to say anything on that?
Right. When we were in the conversations that we had, that the first year is
Right.
And that takes about a year. And then the implementation phase, again, this is approximate.
Sure.
You know, should be two more years. Could go into a fourth year, depending on how complicated it is, which we don't know. So it's basically a placeholder until, because DDOT then, you know, hires civil engineers to go in and do the actual work of figuring out what needs to be done. And
Right.
and $10,000 is a number that
10 million.
Huh?
10 million.
I mean, 10 million. Right? 10 million has been the numbers that, you know, that's just a number that is the usual request. And then it gets refined
Yeah.
as the process goes on.
It's based on that 1 million per block per side of
Right,
block.
no, I understand
Yeah.
that the 10 million. I'm just trying to think strategically and budget-wise whether it's appropriate to ask for the 10 million in FY19 or characterize it as
In capital budgets, how they do it
yeah,
is they never, it's a 6-year outward.
right.
So they always, when, I can give you an example, when we asked for sidewalk maintenance to be increased, they did it over 6 years. So their capital budget, if you look at their capital budget, it's from, what I sent Mary Beth, it's from 2018 to 2020.
Okay.
And so it's spread out.
19. 2019.
FY.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So what I sent you is actually.
So I wonder if it's you know for the FY19 budget process that 10 million be designated into the DDOT's capital budget, and let this be flushed out and figured out whether it's 1 or 2 million in design in 19 and 8 million in implementation in 2021. I just don't understand.
Asking for it all right now?
Yeah,
I think,
are we asking for it all in FY19, or how do we characterize?
We're asking for, again, it's like a catch-22.
No, we've seen it in a number of examples.
Right.
Yeah.
So we basically asked for them to structure how they put it into the capital budget.
All right.
But the ask is made in 2009 for a commitment of $10 million to be spread out however they want to spread it. We're not asking them how to spread it.
and it's also been recommended that this is all asked for in one chunk at this time, right?
Correct. Right. And I think, you know, I understand and I appreciate your concern in crafting it in a thoughtful, effective way.
Right.
But I think at the end of the day, DDOT will figure out how they're going to allocate it. And so I don't know that whether or not we would get what we asked for would hinge on, you know, how we phrase that.
That's
right. They just want to see that the community supports this project.
Yep,
right.
Period.
Right.
Bill?
There's so many good projects here. How is this going to be coordinated? What is the management structure and
right. Well, that's
timetable?
that's a great question, and that was why we added a second operative clause in the resolution that a point person would be designated at DDOT and DOEE to be our community link, just to be sure that we had clear lines of communication with them. What we understand, we've reached out to DOEE and DDOT, Office of Planning, and some other people, other main streets. But what we understand is that it will probably be DDOT that is the main point of contact, and to the extent that DOEE has a pot of money that can be tapped, then they will be brought in to the project, but we don't need to craft the language or the procedure for making that happen. It's really who has the money gets to call the shots. No surprise there. Does that answer your question?
I don't have any questions. I have a comment. I'm very supportive of this. We have plans. The plans were a valuable first step. It's now time to take the next one. So that's where I feel.
agree completely with you.
Commissioner Moore.
Like you're asking the city to provide $10 million in leases as a placeholder to enhance business interests around here. What is the payback to the taxpayer? How are we going to gain? Is this sort of a mini football stadium?
Well, I don't see it that way at all. I mean, I am not a business interest. I am a neighbor. And so I view this as enhancing our streetscape. I mean, this is where I buy my groceries and my wine and my, go to the UPS store to mail packages to my children and, the restaurants and so forth. So from a very selfish perspective, I really view this as enhancing life for you and me and all of our neighbors in this room and beyond. So,
yeah, I think.
Are you saying is the businesses in this community where they putting in their 2 cents? Is that what you're saying?
I mean that wonderful building that is subsiding over there, which houses Giant, CVS, and so forth. They have to prop it up. It's been around for years. They have, what are you asking that building manager to plant trees to enhance the site experience for people? What are you asking other?
If I might, so this is bigger than that. Just to be frank, like this is something that affects the quality of life of every pedestrian who walks down the street. Every person who shops at one of these stores, and it also affects the nearby properties like Soapstone Valley Park, and in terms of reducing the runoff and the quality of the ecology within there. So there are some definite partnerships. There's some outreach that needs to be done and has been done in terms of how these businesses would be affected by substantial construction projects above it. I'm sure there will be requests made in terms of their utilization of what we're doing. But this is something, I think, to me, that it's something that will benefit the community and is bigger than an individual business planting a tree, so to speak.
I'm not your head, but I think.
So I'm sorry. You can ask me a question, but please don't have crosstalk with the other people in the audience. You're on.
My concern here is, I support
Mhm.
it in theory, but what I find abominable is the lack of business investment in our community. And I will include the place where I unfortunately live, under Avalon Bay. I have written to the CEO. I have presented how much money he is making going into the SEC filing. And over and over, I have said all along Avalon, complete neglect since you have taken over. You haven't done anything at the intersection of Avalon and Connecticut. It's a danger zone because all that water comes down the ice and they hardly do anything. And I don't have a car, so I'm paying a high rent so I can avoid it and be more European. Unfortunately, I have to be back in this country for 4 years. But anyway, all along, with the exception of the Montessori school, I agree. Giant, bringing in millions, getting it from us. They provide a service. We provide their CEO a big whopping paycheck. And yet they cannot maintain the basic planting area that development that took place in the 60s. I will give credit to the Brandywine apartment building. Their management definitely does a great job in landscaping throughout the year. But I would have to say, along this, it's more and more neglect on either
Sure.
side. So
And I think that's
I
very,
don't think it's
yeah,
either
you're,
and or this.
You're making a very fair point, and there are. I think we all see business owners along Connecticut that could be doing a better job in front of. Yeah. Yes. Okay. And at the same time, there are groups who reach out and are working with our sweep teams and are working with these business owners to make it better. It's not going to happen overnight. Okay. Sure. It's great. It's been going on for years. Just a second, Teresa. The fact that it's been going on doesn't mean we can't do something now. Okay?
So Van Ness Main Street has a design committee, and one of our members is Sally Sternbach, who's here tonight, and we've been doing a lot of work with our businesses. Sally Gresham, sorry. It's late. Sally's another friend. Anyway, Sally has been helping us along with our design committee to do a lot of work with our businesses, and they have been working hard to make some improvements. The tree boxes are the city's responsibility, but many of our businesses, like Acacia Bistro, have decided that they will take them on and help beautify them. Part of the beautification is the property owner's responsibility, and so we're quietly and slowly working with them. It's hard. We have small businesses who pay a lot of taxes, and they don't have a lot of money to spend on landscaping. So, we're doing the best we can to help supplement that, and that's where we use our grant monies to help with that, and our citizens' monies who contribute to Van Ness Main Street. So we do have a demonstration project we're working on in front of Giant, and Pollinger owns that building, is being very receptive to working with us to do some new landscaping there and improving that particular part of Van Ness. It's slow work. There's a lot of problems with our tree boxes, and so it's not just planting plants. There's a lot of gravel, and that's part of what this project is going to do. A lot of erosion, a lot of stormwater. You mentioned stormwater coming down. That's what this project will do. So the idea is that the city has invested a lot of money in these plans, and what we'd like to try to do is, instead of them sitting on a shelf, we'd like to have them implemented. And I will say that what will happen when they do get implemented is our businesses will be highly impacted, and we will need our residents to step up and keep going into those businesses, or they will fail during construction. That's our worry, and so we'll be working hard on that. But I will say that our businesses are very receptive, but they are all very, very small. And we just lost Embassy Dry Cleaners because of flooding, because they totally lost all their equipment and couldn't pay their rent. They do, but it doesn't cover that.
The gutters are packed with stuff.
Okay.
And they've been like that for 5 years.
So we have a resolution. I've also talked with a few of you in terms of building consensus. We can either pick this up right now. To me, there's a couple of minor changes that we could take up right now, or we can push it through this Streets and Sidewalks Committee, get their input on it, and bring it back up for a quick discussion at our next month's meeting. Okay.
Will that work for Van Ness Main Street?
The timing wise?
Well, I mean, if they're just minor.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we're about to go back to...
There's a meeting tomorrow night, which would be nice to have this ready for.
Well, right, and as we've learned, the more you can get in front of the mayors.
We have the city council budget director on Thursday.
Yeah, okay. Good.
So,
yeah.
So I'm going to make some edits to the resolution as circulated, which is on our issues page. It's based almost verbatim upon the text that Van Ness Main Street provided, but there were a few tweaks just to represent the ANC's view. I'm going to make an edit to the last whereas clause and just swap out the word FY 2019 to DDOT and just say be added to DDOT's capital budget. In the first operative clause, where it says, therefore be it resolved that ANC 3F urges the District of Columbia to allocate $10 million in the FY 2019 budget, I'm just going to strike in the FY 29 budget and say to allocate $10 million toward implementing low-impact development streetscape improvements at Van Ness. And I'm going to keep the clause to commence in 2019, and I think that'll deal with our issues here. Anything else?
Bravo.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion to pass this this resolution as amended. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Adelson. She got that one. All in favor? All opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to allow the Commissioner's prerogative. I know, we are going to table the discussion on the rent concessions update, and we're going to pick that up next month, unless somebody specifically came to hear about that. Okay. And so I'm going to give Commissioner Dickinson the prerogative. I know you have someone from UDC still here. I don't know if you have anybody from Fannie Mae. Do we?
Yeah, I can switch it.
If you feel like switching,
I can bob and weave a little bit. So I make a motion that we amend the agenda so that item.
I'm going to make a motion
14
to
and 12 gets switched.
I'm going to second that. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, it passes. Commissioner Dickinson.
What are we tabling?
We're skipping the update on rent concessions.
Rent concessions.
And then we are going to switch around the order of the discussion and letter related to traffic at 3900, and we're going to talk about item 14, the discussion and resolution on UDC's equity imperative first.
And then we'll come back to.
that.
So with regard, I have a resolution that was posted, unfortunately, just today on our website, and was shared with the commissioners. We heard from President Mason earlier this evening, and he is conducting a series of public outreach meetings with ANC commissioners, with business entities, and other communities throughout the city. The purpose of the resolution is to provide, these are my words, sort of a general support of the university and a general support and acknowledgement of this equity imperative in terms of the gaps that exist in the city and the necessity of a public university and public job training and bachelor's degrees and other opportunities and associate degrees for DC students in order to bridge that gap. We talked tonight a little bit about the management of UDC, its goals, the audits that have been performed. This resolution invites both the mayor and the city council in its operative clauses to take a hard look at the president and the university's budget proposal, both the operating and capital budgets for the next 10 years. The operating budget goes from $75 million to $115 or $125 million over the next 4 years. And the capital budget over the next 10 years is a $750 million capital budget for a variety of improvement projects. I'm not asking, and this resolution is not asking for consensus or agreement that the $750 million is appropriate and is necessary. What it's asking is that the mayor and her budget team take a hard look at that and evaluate whether it's appropriate, and similarly that the council do the same. So the operative clauses, and this is going to sound repetitive now, is number one, that recommends that Mayor Bowser and her budget team fully assess the equity imperative budget proposals presented by UDC for fiscal year 2019 and fully evaluate the need for appropriate operating and capital budgets in a strategic way over the next 10 years. And then it's basically the same thing, but rather than asking, number two is asking the city council to do the same thing.
The only suggestion I have is, I don't know if we could do another operative clauses talking about ANC 3F's realization or support, recognizing that the pathway to the middle class is an important item for every discussion. I know you hit on it, and it doesn't have to be in it, but I don't know if that would be helpful.
I think it's finding that about the pathway to the middle class is the first operative term to sort of introduce why the mayor should be looking at this on the city council. We could borrow from the second whereas clause. Andrea, you have a look of concern on your face.
Why are we not recommending, because you're saying that the mayor should look at it. Aren't we saying that they should do it? That they should allocate the
for
funds?
fiscal year 19, we are saying they should do it for their operating budget.
Assess the proposals for fiscal year and evaluate the need for over the next 10 years. That they assess it. We're not saying that they do it.
Well, DC, it says there's a difference between the two operating clauses. For city council, it says assess and support. For the mayor, it says assess. Was that intentional?
No.
So
can we do assess and support in that first operative clause as well?
Assess and support. What I'm trying to signal, Andrea, is, thank you, Shirley, is assess and support for FY19.
Yeah.
But beyond that, there's an additional 3 years of operating budget and 10 years of capital budget.
So this wording would cover that. Assess and support 2019 and evaluate the need for the future.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's a friendly amendment that I accept, and Pat, if you can help me with suggested language that the ANC acknowledges the equity imperative and the critical.
Oh, understand. Where ANC 3 echoes both Mayor Bowser and UDC's acknowledgement. And then borrowing from the second graph, that the equity imperatives of Washington, D.C. includes education as a priority and gateway to the middle class. Yeah. Just like lining us up with Mayor Bowser and UDC, I think.
Yeah.
And making that very clear. That leads into the two clauses below that very well.
In a whereas clause, Pat, or in
an operative
clause?
Affirming our acknowledgement about this. Because we've used the whereas to talk about Mayor Bowser and UDC, but I'd like to resolve that we acknowledge the same thing.
David, can I suggest that we broaden the language about school children?
Yes, I was going to say the same thing.
Where's that? The third whereas UDC represents the best opportunity to fulfill the equity imperative for many DC school children. Why
And the
not
fourth
DC
whereas.
citizens? Yes.
Residents.
And the same thing, UDC presents a different opportunity for residents.
Not just children.
Yeah.
You just have a lot of
because there's
non-traditional
such a
students.
vital role in
We're not really
older people.
So the third paragraph, whereas UDC represents the best opportunity to fulfill the equity imperative for many DC residents.
Yeah.
And the next one too, for
And the
residents.
next one also, the fourth one.
You read my mind, Naomi.
Children,
Great minds think alike.
children and residents, how about that in the fourth one?
Well, children are residents.
For residents and all that. All right.
I mean, I think it's actually one of the
just for
important features of UDC that
Sure.
it serves so many populations.
Would you be open to changing the terrific in the fourth to fundamental? I don't mean to nitpick. It does, but I think it's more than just a great opportunity.
Yeah, it's a fundamental, critical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What's it called now?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
Okay.
What's the word now that you want to replace?
Fundamental instead of
Fundamental.
terrific.
Going to change fundamental to what?
Terrific.
Oh, terrific.
All right, if we're really wordsmithing, and then we're talking about education, I don't think this is the right use of pace setter. The very first line.
This is right out of the mission statement.
That's out of the
UDC.
mission statement. Okay, then we'll go with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I see you borrowed a lot of the language from the way UDC describes itself, which I think is appropriate to do.
Okay. Any other changes?
I would, if you don't mind, I'd like to, since we have
sure.
two folks from UDC, to gauge their reaction to this.
Go for it, she says.
But I think Commissioner Otterstein had questions at last week's meeting that Casey did send the answers to, so we've let those kind of put together as
If there's information you'd like to share briefly, we can definitely.
right now.
Okay, yeah.
Oh.
We can, why don't we just email about it and we can make sure we share it with the commission. I think the main point is that we're really trying to educate ourselves and equip ourselves with information that might help us better advocate for the university, anticipating various questions that will come up. So that's the background on that. So, thanks, Juanita. We'll be in touch.
Mr. Redman, did you have anything?
That's what we wanted.
Well, and you might consider sharing this resolution with them that is common, and frankly, I think it increases the chances that ANCs will pass a resolution if they don't have to draft the language themselves, especially if they don't feel as familiar with UDC, which we feel very at home with UDC and your mission. So, just a suggestion.
Yeah, we may look at Lee Bryan's email distribution list, and I'd be glad once we get this prepared and signed to post it there as well. If you can remind me, that'd be great. Thanks.
I think 1 second.
All right, that's it.
All right,
You good?
we're good.
Are you making a motion to accept the resolution as amended?
I am.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It passes unanimously.
Thank you on behalf of the EDC.
All right. Commissioner Dickinson, next up, Fannie Mae.
Yes. So, pardon me for being late in the evening and trying to construct this, but roadside development is developing the Fannie Mae property on Wisconsin Avenue at 3900. It's a large tract application. It's basically being developed as a matter of right, the 3900 Wisconsin Avenue property. There are two other...
I'm sorry.
It's okay. There are two other projects on Wisconsin Avenue, 4000 Wisconsin Avenue. So those 3900 and 4000 are in ANC 3C. Sidwell, the third project, is in our ANC 3F. I was invited to a meeting at ANC 3C where Roadside was presenting its traffic study on Wisconsin Avenue, which I sort of view as repairing water between ANC 3C and 3F. Mm-hmm. So we have a vested interest in the traffic on Wisconsin Avenue. There are these three projects that are adding. Let's see if I can find the operative. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth whereas clause represents that there will be 309 additional trips on Wisconsin Avenue per hour through the morning peak hour, 958 trips in the evening peak hour, basically 1,000 vehicle addition in the evening, and 1,800 trips on peak hour on Saturday. So Chairman Mendelson, Councilmember Jay, the head of DDOT, the head of Office of Planning, a couple folks from ANC 3C, myself, Commissioner from ANC 3E, which I believe is north of this property, sort of through Tenleytown, all met and talked about the large tract review for 3900 and talked about the public space application they have in for a curb cut.
And when's that being heard?
That's being heard Thursday, February 22nd, this Thursday. And so the public space hearing in front of the Public Space Committee is on Thursday. And so the concept here is that as Sidwell is in my SND, they have tremendous concerns about the traffic increase on Wisconsin. The neighborhoods, my neighborhood in SND, McLean Gardens neighborhood in ANC3 have tremendous concerns about parking and traffic increases. And that the curb cut that they're installing is basically 180 to 200 feet from the Robin light. So they're going to install a traffic light at the curb cut for their truck entrance to 3900. And then less than 200 feet later, we're going to have Robin Street. So there are two lights. DDOT's preference and standard is 300 feet between lights. So this is an abbreviated space between lights. And there are already 6 lights between Van Ness and Porter Street. So it's an incredibly condensed area. As you guys will recall, Sidwell's already moving its lower school up to their upper campus on Wisconsin Avenue. 4,000 Wisconsin's adding another 700 residential units on top of the 700 that'll be at Fannie Mae building. Hearst Park is going to be renovating and experiencing increased traffic there. There's already congested traffic on 37th Street. Again, they're developing this as a matter of right, essentially, but for this public space permit. The read I got from Chairman Mendelson was, attach as many conditions of proactive things you'd like, or suggestions for the Public Space Committee to embed as conditions on their public space permit, but I was sort of implicitly advised by ANC 3C that you probably shouldn't suggest that the Public Space Committee deny this, or that the Public Space Committee take a delay. They've already delayed this once. So I think it's in our community and ANC's interest that this be more broadly considered. Its impacts on 37th Street, its impacts on Van Ness Street, which is in our ANC, and the impacts that those three projects cumulatively will have on the community in terms of construction fatigue and lots of unanticipated traffic impacts. We're seeing lots of cut through on 37 and on 39th Street, which is in the Playing Gardens. So I broke down the the operative terms in the resolution into sort of what the RNC's view is on the public space application, and then what our views are on the large tract review. There still can be suggestions and recommendations on a large tract review, even though it's sort of essentially a development as a matter of right. So I know you guys don't have the recommendations of ANC 3C. They're actually meeting tonight and making their own suggestions, somewhat similar to ours, to take into consideration what's happening with parking and cut-throughs, Playing Gardens, a lot more on safety associated with the public space curb cut. The trucks that are going to be delivering to the new Wegmans are going to be using all three lanes on Wisconsin Avenue, getting into the middle lane and then cutting across all three lanes to enter the curb cut and to deliver underground underneath the Wegmans.
Because of the size of the trucks.
Because of the size of the trucks. And so it's an incredibly burdensome, crazy situation. And it's really incumbent on ANC. This is sort of ANC 3C's battle to some extent, especially these safety issues and pedestrian issues. The curb cut is in their ANC, but the traffic impacts flood over into our ANC. Okay. So I'm recommending that our ANC look at the public space application and continue to coordinate with Sidwell, evaluate the impacts on the Sidwell Friends plans, the viability of that interaction at Robin Street, which is just south of the new curb cut. I've been asked by the Hearst PTA that DDOT look again at the traffic study on 37th Street that was performed for the Sidwell School renovation. 37th Street is a nightmare. Go ahead, Andrew.
David, how do we recommend to public space that who is it that we're putting this condition on that DDOT will do this, that, or the other? Because it's conditions on DDOT, not conditions on the applicant for the public space. We're not saying that they shouldn't have their application until they do this, that, and the other. We're saying they shouldn't have it until somebody else does this, and someone else does that, and someone else does that. How do we ask that or impose that?
Great point.
David, I have a bigger picture, bigger concern. You've described a lot of construction projects that I have no information about. I mean, Sidwell has even been here for a long time, didn't know what they're doing. I think there was a mention they're not doing something with the Washington Huskies, they're doing something else. I don't feel very qualified to give, instruction or my weight to the city about all this, because I just feel so uninformed. I know there's this public space hearing, you want to get something in, but I think, this is huge. We spend a lot of time on a lot smaller issues of looking at the impacts. I think we need a more sort of time and understand the pieces of
right.
this.
Well, unfortunately that's what ANC 3C did in January, and they've asked for more time. We're not going to get more time, and I'm comfortable. I know the issues. If you guys don't want to do a resolution, I understand. I respect that there's a lot of moving pieces here. I feel qualified to talk about it, and I'll probably talk about it in my individual capacity on Thursday.
You'll be testifying?
Yeah. And so it is a lot to digest. I've met with Sidwell. There's some confidential strategic planning they're doing. Sidwell probably won't come back in front of us. They may come back in March or April, but they're not looking to pull the trigger on their development project anytime soon. But they have a matter of right development. But it's a fair point, Andrea, that there are lots of moving pieces here, and that's ironically why I'm looking for this resolution, is because when I sat in the meeting with Chairman Mendelson, the Director of Office of Planning sat on his hands and said nothing. And we're all looking at we got to develop along these corridors, we got to condense around the corridors. It's going to be 3 or 4 choke points along Wisconsin Avenue. But I know we're a deliberative body, and we need to sit down and think about Sidwell. We need to sit down and think about the Hearst Park impacts and what's going on 37th Street. I get it.
Yeah.
But it's a fair point in terms of what conditions can they apply toward roadside versus what DDOT should be doing. That's an excellent point, and to what degree roadside could be put on the hook to coordinate and work with DDOT in order to evaluate these ancillary effects on Van Ness Street and on 37th Street and elsewhere. I appreciate that, Andrea. I don't know.
David,
So the second bullet phrases it better. Roadsides shall continue to coordinate with Sidwell, including DDOT.
Right.
The rest of them just say DDOT. Can we make roadside? Is there some way in those ones to say roadside will, with the collaboration of DDOT, undertake a new traffic study, something like that? Sorry, that's my main point. There are other issues.
Yeah.
You brought up, and I don't know how much you want to talk about it, but to me, all these things that DDOT hasn't done are reasons why this is premature, and that if not, saying ruling against the application, an extension is somewhat appropriate. But it seems like it was intimated that the public space wasn't going to be interested in that to you, or that's what.
Say that again.
Our colleagues at ANC 3C
right.
suggested not opposing the application, but instead.
I think ANC 3C was taking the advice from Mendelson.
Okay.
That there are a tremendous number of issues here associated with the curb cut as it enables the activation of the site, the 3900. And as that's enabled, it's going to. I gave you the vehicle traffic there. It's going to do all that stuff, but it's it's difficult to know where the leverage is, whether it's on this public space or whether it's on the large track review, because the large track review is really more the Office of Planning getting involved and coordinating with DDOT and other interested parties to make sure that the traffic is assessed. So
I guess what I'm saying is all the impacts that you've listed and the impacts from creating that curb cut and are reasons why it shouldn't be done right now. At least creating the choke point, doing it at the same time as
it's 11 o'clock and we could wordsmith this, but I'm willing to take it off the table, and if people want to give me their suggestions or comments, and I'd be happy to sort of on my own testify on Thursday. So.
But it does seem that whatever happens on Thursday, there's still room for us to tackle some of these issues in other ways through a letter to DDOT.
Right, and hopefully, hats off to Mary Jay and Mendelson for pulling that committee together. I mean, one of my recommendations is really under the large track reviews, you can keep that committee together so that there's common coordination and a common voice behind this. So we'll see.
Okay.
I think he's. Is there some sort of greater weight we can give your comments when you speak? I don't know.
Not without a resolution, I don't think.
No, but can we authorize David to speak on our behalf? So it's not a resolution with great weight, but he stands up there and he says, "I'm representing 3F, and here's what we think." That's all I'm asking, because that has more gravitas or something than just standing there and saying I'm a private citizen.
Are you submitting written testimony?
I don't know what I'm doing yet. I'm so, to be honest, not to make this personal, I mean, this has been in my lap for about a week.
Okay.
And it's a steep learning
Never
curve.
mind.
I appreciate the gesture, but I think, I will say that I'm representing myself as a single member district, but I don't mind doing that. I think it still carries some
Is
weight.
there a citizens group, a neighborhood group, whatever that is sort of on top of this? Because I would really love a citizens group or a neighborhood group is on top, because what I would love is like a presentation with maps, with the timeline, to sort of get an understanding of what this gorilla is. Which parts of it are spilling over to our ANC.
Right.
Because I mean, this has things going from Van Ness in Connecticut to McLean Gardens, and lots of projects and projects that are many years.
Naomi, you've hit on the problem here, and the problem is that Office of Planning is not coordinating with all these groups and asking for that storyboard. That's not happening.
Is that our resolution? Is to the Office of Planning?
I'm happy to take that up in March with you folks and sort of see what the tea leaves. Yeah. I mean, I think there are lots of disparate interests and lots of different pieces of information here, but there's not an assessment of how it's going to spill over onto 37th Street.
How it's going to fit together or not.
Yeah. Right. So there are these three disparate projects with not a comprehensive view of it.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. I appreciate the advice. Though.
All right. So next issue is the approval of minutes from November, December, January, and I don't think we did.
I don't have minutes yet prepared from that special meeting.
Okay. I have some edits for December. They can be real quick, and then I'll send them to you.
Okay.
I'm just going to go over them. I had no issues with November or January. They both look right to me.
December's the one that I wasn't there for.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that somebody.
Oh, mine was January. Karen Forey, because her name wasn't spelled right.
There was a couple.
Can you send me? Can you send them to me? The corrections.
Yeah, I had a couple.
If I misspelled something.
There was a variation in dates. It says December 14th, and the first line it says November 14th.
Okay, so I cut and pasted something, so I need to fix that.
So we'll get, all right. So I'm just going to cover it, so we can vote on them. I'm just going to say what those edits are. It's making that December 14th change. It's editing the commissioners present to Ruttenberg, Jakobczyk, Siddig, Brunn, and Dickinson. Did I misspell your commissioner name? It's Ruttenberg, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. The motion to approve the agenda was 4-0. All the rest were 5-0. Just Commissioner Brown's joined us after the start of the meeting. I actually made the motion to approve the ANC 3F quarterly financial report. The call to order was at 6:01, and the call to adjournment was at 6:13. So it was a little bit shorter than tonight.
Okay.
That was such a good role model.
I make a motion to have the minutes for November, December, and January accepted with those revisions.
Second from Commissioner Edelstein. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It passes unanimously. Other business.
Treasurer's report. We received $7.68 in interest. We spent $40.01 on Verizon Wireless. Our 2 allotments so far this fiscal year are on our way as we speak into our bank account. And our bank balance is $86,435, which is well within the parameters we decided upon at the beginning of the year. the end.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
You did win that one.
Nay.
Commissioner Rudner.
Wow.
All in favor? All opposed? It passes unanimously. 10:58.
Wow. She's our biggest fan. She's the last one
Can you turn that
standing.
off, please?
The last one standing.